this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those nerds! Nerds! Nerds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got us some family here.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the ITMOD podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Do animals talk in this dimension? Because I don't want to freak anyone out.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm a mistake. I'm not like anyone else I know.
And Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
Crack an egg on it! Ka-ka!
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Das, the indie dork.
It's still Jurassic Park. It's a massive park. What could possibly go wrong?
And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the disco dork. She wanted to go dancing, so we watched a movie. And welcome to another edition of the ITMOD podcast. This is the Dorkies 2018 Part 2.
I feel like Billy has made my life so much better for introducing me to the words of the Jurassic Park theme.
As John Williams intended it.
I am looking forward to the last 60 years of my life where I'm singing it every day.
Yeah.
Good luck, because it's never getting out of your head. You're welcome. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the back half of our Dorkies, where we give you our 5 through 1. But before we do that, for the uninitiated, if you, for some reason, just jumped to this episode and skipped over the first half,
that's too many hours. I could do 2 hours. I can't do 4 hours.
Yeah.
Well, shame on you. You're not a real ITMOD fan.
Yeah.
I'm joking. We love you all.
Yeah.
We can't afford to lose any listeners.
No, we can't.
No.
Let's try to stay in the double digits, folks.
Let's do it. So we're going to recap really quick our 10 through 6, and then we'll move to our 5 through 1. Brian, start it off, please.
All right, so my number 10 was One Cut of the Dead, which was a last-minute replacement, bumping Creed 2. Just had to mention it.
Still cheating. Still cheating.
9 is The Night Comes for Us. 8 is Black Klansman. 7 is Avengers Infinity War. And 6 was mid-90s.
Wife dork.
My number 10 was Support the Girls. Number 9, Won't You Be My Neighbor. Number 8, An Evening with Beverly Loughlin. Number 7, Black Panther. And number 6, Thunder Road.
B.
My number 10 was Hereditary. My number 9 was Thunder Road. My number 8 was First Reformed. My number 7 was Mandy. And my number 6 was Sorry to Bother You.
Also B. Listeners, you'll figure it out.
Brian, how dare you do yours like that? Give me a break. You should be more like Brad. My number 11 was In the Apocalypse. My number 10 was One Cut of the Dead. My number 9 is Tigers Are Not Afraid. Number 8, Mission Impossible Fallout. Number 7, Black Panther. And number 6, Avengers Infinity War.
I thought you were the indie dork.
I don't know what you mean.
I know, right?
All right, D.
My
That's
number
me.
41 is Love, Simon. My number 40 is Teen Titans
Stop
Go
it,
the Movies.
stop it.
Number 39 is Mid-90s.
All right, my number 10 was Donnybrook. Number 9, Won't You Be My Neighbor. Number 8, The Perfection. Number 7, Elizabeth Harvest. Number 6, Hereditary.
Yeah.
All right, as we did in the first half, we are going to read off some of the favorite films of the year from our listeners. We have number 5 from our good friend Ted Gahagan, the director of We Are Still Here and Mohawk, right?
Yeah.
Mohawk, which was really great.
He has several picks. I think he gave us his whole top 10. Let me see. First off, and I quote, good pick, Hereditary, then Suspiria, Blockers, Terrified, Upgrade, yes. Satan's Slaves, The Ritual, and the first segment of the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
They're all good.
And and shit. I forgot about Paddington 2.
Oh. He has a very clear aesthetic, except for Paddington 2.
I think it fits.
Satan, Slaves, and Paddington 2. I don't understand why you wouldn't think those would go together.
You need balance. All right, B. You ready?
All right, man.
All right.
This number 5, was it always your number 5, or did it get bumped to number?
It moved around, but I think this one has been number 5 for at least the last week or so.
All right,
so it's been pretty consistent. It's the film The Hate You Give.
Oh shit!
Love
Damn
that
it!
movie.
I missed this movie.
Yeah,
I really wanted
I did
to
too.
check it out.
It comes out later in January on Blu-ray, so it comes out in a couple of weeks. But this movie really hit me in such an impactful way. So the character Star, played brilliantly by Amanda Steinberg, witnesses her childhood best friend Khalil get gunned down by a police officer, and really it's just about her going through the process of dealing with this, not just in her own neighborhood but also dealing with this at school. She has to testify in front of a grand jury so they can indict the cop, and it's just really about the pressures that she has being the witness to her friend being killed. But to me, I think, especially talking about a lot of the cinema that we've seen this year, I think this film specifically tackles the issues of police brutality in such a direct way. That I don't know. It was just really, really good. It's based off of a YA novel written by Angie Thomas, directed by George Tillman, who's done films like Men of Honor. He's done Soul Food and some other films as well.
Not just some other films. He did Faster with The Rock, which is The Rock's best movie.
Yeah, he did do Faster. Yeah,
Don't you guys give me that look? That's
Faster's good.
Yeah,
I like Faster a lot.
Yeah.
I really do. So George Tillman definitely had.
Oh my God, Darren.
Okay, D.
It's so good.
But George Tillman is really working in a place where you could tell he loves this material and he wants to do justice to this material as well. And really what I want to focus on is Amanda Steinberg. This is really a female empowerment movie, even though it does deal with the shooting of a black man. This is her movie. And I talked about this when I reviewed it. I talked about this with Brad and Lisa, that the thing I kind of wanted to focus about this movie is with her character is this idea of duality. And this is a running theme that we've seen in black cinema throughout all these films we talk about, whether it's Sorry to Bother You, Black Klansman, Blind Spotting, is that that idea of having to, what we call in the black community is code switching. Where you kind of have to switch up your mood, your identity, your attitude. Like, so she goes to school on the other side of town, which is a predominantly white school, a private school, and she calls herself Star 2.0. So she has to act a different way when she's at school, but when she's back home in the neighborhood, and she can kind of let herself loose and be herself. So it's just that idea of duality. And then once this inciting event happens and how that starts to infiltrate and her two worlds start to collide with each other, the pressures that takes for her, as far as her not being able to separate her two distinctive identities. And I think they really tackle this in a really smart way that hasn't really been addressed in cinema. I mean, I think we've seen it in cinema because this is something that even as a joke, we kind of see stuff like that where it's like, okay, we got to switch up when we go to work or whatever like that. But to actually really dive into what it means to have this duality in two different worlds, I think they tackle this in a really, really smart way. And yeah, man, this movie just really hits home. And some of the conversations that they are having in this movie, specifically there's a conversation between Amanda Steinberg and her uncle, played by Common, who is a police officer. And Common is talking to her as far as what a officer, his process when he does a routine traffic stop, what goes through his mind when he pulls somebody over. Like, like, are they leaning over? Like, what are they, like, he's just going through the whole thing, like all the steps that a cop must do. But then, like, she basically asked him, would you do the same thing if you knew that the guy was white? and he doesn't really have an answer for that. And that's the thing that they're really trying to answer in this movie, and they're bringing up these questions and having these type of conversations where, I don't know, it's something that I think we need to start talking a lot more about and being more open about. And I think this movie tackles that head on, and it's just such a good movie. I was afraid this was going to be a movie that was going to be too heavy-handed, and it's not. It really does handle it with some nuance as well. It's not perfect. There's a character, Anthony Mackie, who plays like the neighborhood drug kingpin. His character seems a bit useless in the overall story. They try to make him be a villain of the movie, which I don't think you really need him in the movie, because I think just the pressure of Amanda Steinberg having to testify and go up for this grand jury is enough pressure to really not have that other element of an antagonistic presence to give her something else to kind of have to fight against. But just overall, with all that being said, it's just such a really, really good movie. So,
all right, wife Dork, your number 5.
My number 5 is a movie that is so near and dear to my heart, and I was so stoked that ITMOD sponsored this movie at Lost Weekend 10, and we did, might I say, a super fun, amazing intro for it.
Yeah. We got zombified.
Yes! Yeah. That was the best. We got certainly some Halloween profile pics for life. Except for Brian wasn't there.
I know.
I just remembered that and I got sad.
Yeah. What movie are you talking about, Lisa?
Anna and the Apocalypse.
But Lisa, that's crazy because it was on your list last year.
Whoops. See, that's because last year I was just seizing the moment and celebrating the movies that I wanted to celebrate.
Yeah.
But this year I decided, like Brad, to follow the Academy rules.
Oh.
Therefore, bonus, I get to talk about Anna and the Apocalypse 2 years in a row. And that's just amazing.
You're a flip-flopper.
I am. And I'm proud of it. Growth is change.
Mm-hmm.
Change is growth. For me personally, there's nothing not to love about this movie.
It's a Lisa movie.
It's a zombie, coming of age, Christmas musical that has a super cool female protagonist in Ella Hunt. She plays the character of Anna, and I just think that there was so much attention paid to every element of this movie. The story is beautiful. All of the characters have a interesting perspective to offer. The jokes are funny, and the music is so good. So good. They've been towards the end of this year, they've finally released the soundtrack to this movie.
Oh, on vinyl?
Yes, it is on vinyl. I do not yet have it on vinyl, but I've been listening to it on Spotify in my car. It is like the soundtrack of my Christmas. I don't need any other Christmas music now that I have Anna and the Apocalypse. And the Monkees' new album. Actually, I haven't listened to the Monkees' new album because it's a little painful. It's not that good. Oh.
No.
But anyway.
I think it's fine.
Why wouldn't they put Rio Ryuichi on it? That's what I don't understand. Anyway, so I love this movie.
Yeah.
If you have not seen this movie yet in the theaters, it better still be in the theaters.
It is.
Okay. Then you should totally go see it. It's a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, what is the name of the song that the asshole boyfriend sings?
Soldier at War.
Yeah.
Man.
Yes.
That guy's great.
I can't stand his character because he's a dick, but that's my favorite number in the
Same.
movie. This shit is
That's
hilarious.
a great scene. That's a great scene. I also like the Dirty Christmas song that is sung by Marley Sue.
At the school,
the character named Lisa. I had many high school age performances that I tarted up weirdly because I don't know, that's just what you do in high school. There's a song called I Love a Piano that I didn't realize it was a super dirty song until I started to sing it with a little bit of sass to it. And I can't believe that in high school my voice teacher would give me the song, but I love a piano. I love a piano. I like to hear somebody play. One of the lines is, I know a fine way To treat a Steinway, I run my fingers o'er the keys, the ivories, and with the pedal, I love to meddle. What?
Oh.
Anyway.
Now, were you
So that was
atop
great-
of the piano when you were singing this?
No,
Okay.
because the top was up,
Oh,
and I would just slide off. But I did my best 17-year-old estimation of a sultry walk around the piano, and my voice teacher, Mrs. Buck, I love that woman, audibly said "What?" when I was singing this song. It was great. So anyway.
What's the name of the boyfriend-girlfriend character in that movie?
Oh,
Ant-Man and the Apocalypse? It was Lisa
Nick
Sarah.
and Lisa.
Nick
Not
and Lisa.
Nick. Nick is the bad guy. Chris and Lisa.
Chris and
they
Lisa.
are such a sweet high school couple.
Yeah.
And you identify with it.
I do.
Because you married your high school sweetheart.
I did.
I think that if they didn't turn into zombies, they totally would have made it.
Yeah.
As a couple.
Aw.
And maybe they'll just be a sweet zombie couple.
But I like the Hollywood ending song because
Yes!
it includes their perspective as much as it does the disillusioned kids' perspective. I think that's a really great number.
Yeah.
That whole thing. And I love the choreography. The choreography was actually done by Sarah Swire, who played Steph. And because it's an independent film, there was only so much time to do choreography. So for a lot of that number, they did just kind of staging and then letting people just kind of do their thing. And I think that approach created so much character in those group numbers that, I mean, I just remember the first time I watched it, and my hair just stood on end. I mean, I was just so excited about this movie, and I continue to be excited about this movie. And it's crazy to see it out in the world, you know, after seeing it at Fantastic Fest and going like, some of these movies are not even going to get distribution.
Yeah.
And the fact that this one that is so like, it feels like it's made for me, got picked out of the group.
And it's had a
it's
tremendously
playing at
positive response, too.
AMC,
Yeah.
Tyson's Corner.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got a poster that's lit up and everything.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I feel like I had some kind of hand in that, even though I totally don't. But I don't know. I'm just really proud of this film.
Yeah.
I think it's so fun.
Do you know the origin story for the movie?
Yeah. It was written originally by Alan McDonald. I think they did it as kind of like a little short film.
It was Ryan McHenry.
Ryan
did the
McHenry.
short film for it.
There you go.
You would know Ryan McHenry as. Do you remember the meme where a dude would feed cereal to Ryan Gosling on the screen, and then
Yes.
Ryan Gosling would turn away right as he went to put the cereal in his mouth? That's the dude that
That's
wrote
that guy?
the short film for this.
And he's since passed away.
Yeah, yeah. He got bone cancer
Mhm.
and died. And his friend put the movie, like, took the short film that he had done and turned it into a narrative script, and then teamed up with the director for Ant-Man and the Apocalypse to like turn it into
John
a
McPhail.
real thing. Yeah, John McPhail.
Which, this is his directorial debut?
Yeah, I think he'd done. No,
He
it's
did
not.
it-
He had another film.
Yeah, he did a small film
Okay.
before it.
Where do we go from here?
That's right. That's right.
But this is definitely the widest release thing that he's done.
Yeah. Congratulations to that guy.
Yeah,
I met him
no
at
kidding.
Fantastic Fest. He actually judged the rap battle that I was in.
That's right.
Got to talk to him for a bit. A really cool guy, and he deserves all the success. This movie's great.
Such a heavy accent. I had to use my whole brain to listen to him. I had to really concentrate.
Darren technically lost that rap battle, but John McPhail said, no, you should have won.
All three of the judges said I won. So
It's
yeah.
those birth movies, death people. They're a total clique.
Oh,
they screamed the loudest.
They screamed the loudest.
Yeah. No harm, no foul. I'm good. I'm good with it.
Anybody who has friends, I'm a little resentful towards.
Oh, all right. Brad, you're number 5.
I'm kicking things off with the first masterpiece of the year. Anybody know off the top of your head what was the first masterpiece of the year?
Oh, it came out this year?
Came out January 12th. January 12th? January 12th.
Mom and Dad.
No. Paddington.
Commuter?
2.
Oh.
Paul King's follow-up to his own movie. It is one of the most beautiful looking films of the year. He's such a rich stylist, but also, like Lisa was saying with Won't You Be Your Neighbor, it's what it does to your heart is incredibly beautiful. Extremely rich, emotional experience with this silly little CGI bear voiced by Ben Whishaw. The story is that Paddington, it's his aunt's 100th birthday. He wants to buy something really special. He goes to this antique store, sees this beautiful book, this pop-up book depicting London. There's this amazing sequence where you go into the book with Paddington and his aunt, and the camera races through the pages and the pop-up display. It's one of the most exhilarating sequences visually of the year. And he goes, I need to get this book for my aunt. Well, it costs a ton of money, and you don't have the coin. And even more problematic is the fact that this has-been actor played by Hugh Grant also wants the book because he knows within that book contain clues to an even larger fortune. So he steals the book, and Paddington is blamed for the crime and goes to prison. And from there, it only becomes more eventful and cinematic and heartwarming. It's filled with so many wonderful performances from the Brown family. Sally Hawkins is even in something that could easily have just been a throwaway performance from her, she commits to Mrs. Brown the way that she did in The Shape of Water, or she did with Blue Valentine. She's fantastic in the movie, and and Ben Wishaw's amazing, and I want all the toys, and I want all the doll houses that come out of this film. You could take a frame from this the way you would something from Wes Anderson or Isle of Dogs, and it's just as meticulously orchestrated as you see in those films. But because it's a Paddington sequel, people dismiss it. But I truly think, like Paul King, he comes out of the Mighty Boosh, and he's an incredible stylist. How many times can I say incredible? I can say incredible a lot.
Yeah,
many.
Paul King, he is doing Pinocchio.
He's attached to Pinocchio, and I think he's also attached to like Willy Wonka, according to IMDb.
For Disney, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there any chance that they might do a Paddington 3, or they?
I think he's not going to be a part of that if they do a Paddington 3. It's been a while since I've seen any news on that movement.
Okay.
I love the first Paddington, but I think Paddington 2 like trumps it big time.
But Paddington is like a series of books, because I remember getting them from the Fox Mill Elementary School public little library thingy. So
I have all the Paddington books. It was one of those things that my mom would read to me every night.
I think there's a lot more there with the Paddington character. I just don't want to see him necessarily cheapened in any way, because I think that this second movie is just so perfect.
Well, that's my thing. It's like Paul King, because these two movies are so beloved. Like, if someone else takes over the helm of like the next movie, or they continue the series, like with that, I know it wouldn't tarnish like the love that people have for these first two movies, but how would that be moving forward if?
I mean, like I said, it's such a unique vision that somebody else coming on board, I would hope would, if not mimic his style, would bring a vision that's equally as unique.
How do kids feel about Paddington? Does anybody know? Like, do
Billy?
Children? Because I've only heard grown-ups talking about how much they love Paddington. Your children did not see Paddington?
I didn't see it with them, no. So I don't know if they saw it or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Darren? Has Tia seen it?
I have not the second one. She's seen the first one. She liked the first one, but neither her nor I have seen the second one yet. That's an interesting question. That you're right, Lisa. Online or on social media, and I do not base the.
It'd be weird if we just followed a bunch of 7-year-olds.
But
what are they tweeting about?
Well, but even with the adults who say they love it, I don't hear them saying, "And I showed it to my kid, and she loved it, or he loved it even more, or whatever." I just hear the grown-ups saying their opinion of it. So I'd be curious to know that as well.
I mean, I don't think it's a very kiddie movie. You know, it's not The Secret Life of Pets.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the Ugly Dolls
I've seen
film.
that movie.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we saw some horrible trailers before Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Horrible. It made me sad for children.
You know, so I'm not surprised that it didn't take off here in the States within the kiddie community, but I don't really give a shit about those kids. I like this movie for me and my adult needs.
All right. Shout out to Max. I love you.
Max is one of the cool ones. He knows it.
Billy, you're number 5.
Well, much in the spirit of Paddington 2,
Uh-oh.
my number, but you know, I mean, look, finding yourself and happiness and all of that. My number 5 pick is Corley Fargeet's Revenge.
I knew it.
Number 5.
Yeah, number 5.
I thought this was gonna be like number 1.
But what do the kids think about it? That's what I want to know.
Oh man, boy, do I is it bad that I have an answer for that question instead of Paddington 2?
When you said you didn't have an answer for Paddington 2, in my mind I was like, but you've shown her fucking Revenge now?
I cannot wait for that episode of Billy and Claire's excellent cinematic adventures.
I try so hard not to let what I am excited in seeing like color what the kids get to see if they're
Same.
excited in it.
Same.
But like I just did not connect with Paddington. And when Paddington 2 hit the theaters and everybody was excited, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's another movie that's out. Yeah. And I just didn't make the time to put that in front of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, they might have liked Paddington all the same. I don't know. I feel deficient as a parent now.
Good.
But no, Revenge is my number 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know, as the indie dork, I guess you can expect that I'll have a series of picks now for the remainder of mine. I think I got all my blockbusters out of the way. You know, Corley Fargeet, this is her first movie that she made, and I think a lot about you know, what people do as first movies and what they're able to put together as their first efforts. And Revenge is an amazingly constructed film. It is a rape revenge, and I think it's important to note that, you know, if that type of film is not for you, I certainly wouldn't push the movie to you. And I'm not sure, like, I like what she does with the genre in the film, but I think if you are not keen to watch those types of movies, there is not a type of that movie that can be made that will put you onto the other side of the fence. And I think that's okay. But I talk up the movie for 3 reasons. Number 1, I think it's gorgeously shot. I think it's incredibly well done in that regard, especially the perspective that she takes with what the camera looks at and what the camera doesn't look at. I think that the story is interesting. I think the character arc for Matilda Lutz's character is interesting. I like following that story, and I am engaged with it the entire time. And number 3, the final sequence of events, that final fight scene is just legit. I think it's one of the best battle sequences of all of the movies that I've seen this year, to include Timo's amazing movie. Like, I think he comes in terms of action choreography. What he put together for an entire feature-length film is madness and bonkers, and I think it's amazing. But in terms of like a single sequence of action events, I love that final battle, and I love it precisely. Well, I guess no, precisely because I'm the dork, and that dude is naked the entire fight.
Okay.
It's like it's Eastern Promises, you know, naked fight scene where everybody is as vulnerable as they can possibly be. And I appreciate that that's the final fight for this particular movie in this particular genre. And I really do enjoy that final battle. There is just blood everywhere. I don't know. I showed Brad this just on social media, I think, before, but I posted this on Facebook. But Claire's been talking about doing art for a Twitter feed for the Bill and Claire's Excellent Adventure.
This is viral in my heart.
And she has drawn this thing where, like, her idea is that, you know, she's a Pretty in Pink kind of girl, and then I'm like a horror aficionado on the other end, and there's a lightning bolt separating them. And, you know, she talks about, like, I have hearts and a lollipop like a little kid does, and then you have blood because you like blood, and blood is everywhere. And like that video is going through my head as I'm like, and you know what else is great about Revenge? This giant end sequence where they literally had to have used gallons of blood. They wrecked that fucking house that they rented. I cannot imagine what the cleanup fees were for it when they were done. So anyways, there's a lot to chew on there. But that's my number 5.
All right. I also expected this to be higher on your list, but I knew it was going to be on there. Okay, my number 5 is another film that has already been mentioned. So for the sake of brevity, I will not go into it in depth, but it is Boots Riley's debut masterpiece, Sorry to Bother You. Yeah, this movie, my initial screening of it was at the AFI with Boots Riley in attendance, and that discussion paired with the film, I can't help but to think it elevated that entire experience and also my thoughts on the film thereafter. There are certain things that I crave when I think about cinema. On one end of the spectrum, I crave a familiarity. So if I'm going to watch a comedy, like I want the familiar experience of laughing during a comedy. If I'm going to an action movie, I want the familiar experience of, oh shit, doing the, wincing or fist pumping during certain action scenes. But also on the opposite end of that, when I go to these movies, I want to see something new. I want to see stories told in a different way. I want that framing and the choreography and the shooting of that action done in a way that I've not seen before. I want those jokes told in a manner, or I want to hear new jokes that I haven't heard before. So I want my humor derived from that. My laughter derived from that. And, with what Boots Riley presents in his first feature film is his viewpoint, as Brad mentioned, of the world that I also live in, told through the lens and from the mind of someone who doesn't see or think like I do. So I have familiar themes in this film that are near and or close to me that I can relate to, but he's showing me these things in a way that I myself have never visualized when I think about, deal with, or confront the issues that are in this film. And because of that, I'm infinitely appreciative of it. We again, in a year where we've had multiple films talk about things that are going on within the same community, in order to, and it just shows how many different viewpoints of a people that we have that are all going through these same troubles, and the fact that we can have unique and individual voices, distinctive voices, and that's my biggest takeaway is that, like Jordan Peele and like Boots Riley, when you see his film, like you mentioned in last episode, when you watch a Wes Anderson film, and Lisa talked about Beverly Luff Linen, that film's director, how that film feels distinctive to that director, how this film is distinctive to Boots Riley. And like Brad mentioned, he discovered this film first and then went back and found out who Boots Riley was, and would begin to see a connective tissue to who he was, the things he would do in his past, his activism, his music, and see that manifested fully in this film in new and different ways. And Boots Riley does have a unique and very loud voice, and I appreciate that so much. And Lakeith Stanfield is great in the film. Tessa Thompson she continues to be a force of nature for women and also women of color in cinema. You look at her track record, man, she's killing it in fucking Thor Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. She's killing it in this film. She's also in Creed 2 and Annihilation.
Mm-hmm. Men in Black coming up.
Her filmography has become so diverse, and at the center of that diverse filmography is an incredible actor. And the fact that Boots Riley only elevates and highlights this performer in this film and gives her so much to work with. Whether she's saying something on screen or you're just looking at her, the accoutrements that she's adorned with, her earrings that speak to her power. And so it's so many layers in this film that you can go through and go back and rewatch. This is another movie that has stuck with me, and I go back and think about the movie in certain elements, whether it be in discussion with people who talk about it or if I'm just thinking about it subconsciously on my own or consciously. I think it's an important film. I think it's an important film, not just because of the themes that it talks about, but because it came in a year when there are other filmmakers who are using this platform to speak out on their worldview. And I hope that the success of this film and the fact that it's from a first-time director, African-American filmmaker, not a big budget, but it's been so widely received and critically praised that I hope that this allows Boots Riley to go further in Hollywood and tell more stories from his unique perspective. That's my biggest hope, is that the success of this film critically and its release commercially allows him to, like Jordan Peele and his success with Get Out, now he's got another monster on his hands with Us, and I can't wait for Boots Riley's follow-up as well in that same vein. So, yeah, that's my number 5. Next up, we have... Man, I do not want to butcher your name, Sophia. I am so sorry. So I'm going to try Sophia Kako.
You offended Siri.
No, not you, Siri. Sophia
Cacciola.
Cacciola. And I quote, "You were never really here, just exceptional filmmaking, and you were never really lying, because that is a great film." And that's one we also hosted at the Alamo Draft House.
Yeah.
Yep.
We got good taste.
We do.
And that was on your not top 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Great film.
So right now it's at my 25 spot.
Oh, don't do that shit, man. Just go to your number 4. Too many numbers, B. Number 4.
No, man. Yeah,
I got you.
I know. Okay. Number 4.
Yep.
Number 4. Stay focused.
All
4
right.
is... Brad gets so hyped whenever we get these numbers.
I'm excited.
Black Panther.
Nice.
All right.
That's a good pick.
So my number 4 is Black Panther. I know Billy and Lisa have talked about this film. I believe it's your number 7 spots. Number 6, Billy, for you?
7 for me.
7? Okay.
Could
Okay.
just as easily been 6.
6, yeah. So yeah, basically, I kind of just want to talk a little bit about Ryan Coogler. Talk about Marvel a little bit. Talk about the fact that how he was able to make a Marvel film and talk about a lot of these different themes that we don't normally see in a comic book movie, specifically in a movie that has this built-out universe. Of course, Marvel has this sandbox, and they allow these filmmakers to play in this sandbox and to kind of do different things creatively. But we do know that there is kind of a mandate that these characters need to be at a certain place. Kevin Feige is kind of shepherding all this stuff because he is leading this to culminate with Endgame that we know now. But for Ryan Coogler to become part of this universe, to be able to take the character of Black Panther to really explore some of the ideas that he wanted to explore with Black Panther, dealing with African culture, the heritage of African culture in the continent of Africa, and also with the character of Killmonger dealing with the African American experience and how that relates to African culture and our lineage to that continent. It's just interesting how he's able to really tackle and deal with all these different themes and to make them extremely personal with the characters involved in the film, with the character of T'Challa and Killmonger, to be able to explore those themes in the movie. Also going with the African culture, dealing with ideas of like the Dora Milaje and all-female bodyguards that protect the king, which was a real thing in the continent of Africa. To explore a lot of these different things, I think is extremely fascinating. I just recently rewatched the film not too long ago, and the thing that really hit me the most was those 2 scenes when he goes to the ancestral plane. The first when he goes to visit his father, and I think in that moment, you really kind of see the thesis of the film when his father tells him, you're a good man, but it's hard for a good man to be king. And I think the movie is really trying to take the character of T'Challa and he's trying to figure out what he needs to do as a good man to be king. Because as we learn, the second time he goes to the ancestral plane, after he finds out who Killmonger is, he's basically telling his ancestors, like, look, because of the fear of our discovery, you created this monster of who this man is. Now it's my responsibility for that. I have to stop him. So it's really righting the wrongs from the sins of his father. And I just found those two scenes to really kind of be the statements a lot of what this movie is really trying to say. And I don't know, I just found it really, really profound. Now, a lot of people, even myself included, talk about the visual effects in the third act, but I think a lot of times you do the film with discredit if you just focus on the visual effects. And I think that you could say that about any Marvel film. But Ryan Coogler is really trying to do something special with this movie. I think he really was able to pull that off. And it's just a movie that has stayed with me. And didn't even on the cultural aspect of the movie, for a lot of kids growing up, this is going to be their Superman. Like the way we look at Superman from Christopher Reeve's Superman, Batman '89, like 20 years from now, this character, these characters from Marvel, but specifically Black Panther, for a lot of children of minority and African American kids, this is going to be their Superman.
Forget Superman; it's going to be their Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's incredibly inspiring to me. Not having a character like that growing up, knowing that our kids growing up are going to be able to look at that and live in a world that they would never have known any different. Seeing a black superhero in this way. So I don't know, man. This movie just really hit at the right time, and it's just number four.
There's a viral video going around of a young black kid. I would say maybe 4 or 5, who got a action figure from Black Panther. And the video is just the kid going, "Wakanda forever! Wakanda forever! Wakanda forever!" But I mean, it's 7 or 8 seconds. The kid squeezes in probably 30 repetitions of Wakanda forever. But like, I have thought a lot about that video. I saw it like 2 or 3 days ago, but it's been on my mind since. It's just like that kid, like you said, having the opportunity to have that relationship with like a major blockbuster property that's a huge part of the culture, where like they can have that toy and they can have that thing, and that to see themselves on the screen, like, man, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
All right, wife Dork.
Yes.
Your number 4.
My number 4 is also a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
It is Avengers: Infinity War.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about what sets Marvel apart in terms of superhero films. And I think one of the things is that they're willing to take risks with their characters, and they really spend a lot of time on the characters' vulnerability and their personal limitations. And so the big gamble with Avengers Infinity War that we don't see very often in superhero movies or any kind of like action film is what if they just straight up lose?
Mm-hmm. We talked about this in Creed 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know that Creed's going to win.
Yeah. So there were stakes in Infinity War that were higher than ever. There was a villain that was stronger than ever, and the Avengers, in the state that they are entering this film, is they're just not ready. And because of the foibles of some of our favorite heroes, half of the Earth's population is gone. So we think about Tony Stark has been a very broken man from the very first film, and still in this movie he is trying to overcome his ego and the idea of him always knowing what's right, and that's what keeps him from reaching out to Captain America. He still hasn't grown enough to reach out to another person. And with Chris Evans, he really is actually Captain America. No, with Steve Rogers, his unwillingness to let Vision make the sacrifice that he wanted to make, because he wouldn't let one man lose, we lost half of the population because Star-Lord cannot get his emotions in check. Yeah. He is still fly off the handle, action before thinking guy. You know, we lost another Infinity Stone. Like, all of these characters, you know, just like in life, we have challenges that meet us before we're ready, and we make mistakes. Yeah. And I thought, and I like just the emotion following that first watch of Infinity War, just utter devastation. It was just so depressing. And even though I'm a grown up and I have the knowledge that all of these characters are coming back, when Peter Parker was dusted, it affected me. When Nick Fury was dusted, it affected me. And I love the fact that the MCU is just being as nuts as comics can be. And they allow characters to fall on their face just so it'll feel so much better when they get up again. Unless they lose again in Endgame. Oh, no, that would be horrible. And unprecedented and very brave. And
Hulk's not losing again in Endgame.
That is
I refuse to believe it.
He had his issue with not being able to communicate with this other being that is himself in this kind of like symbiotic, you know, relationship. The one person who does not make a discernible mistake is Thor. He is doing the hero's journey. He's pulling himself up after all of the tragedy in his life.
He made the mistake of his aim was a little off.
Yeah. Went for the chest.
Go for the head.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, you're right. I go with my original thesis statement. Everybody fucked out, and now Thanos has won. But I think like the only way that's going to get the Avengers through this next battle is some serious soul searching, and you do not expect that in a cheesy blockbuster popcorn film.
And, I mean, you kind of see it in that trailer for Endgame. I mean, all those characters are doing some. Even Thor, everybody is doing soul searching. But going to your point, like that snap, that end scene. Watching that in the theater, it's such a deafening silence. Watching that, it was just profound the way that scene played out and how the audience was just so enraptured in that moment. And I agree with you. I think even though we know that, yes, the Spider-Man's going to have another movie, Black Panther's going to be back, and these movies are in production.
They're dead.
I know. But being in the theater in that moment, you're with those characters, and sometimes you have to give yourself over to these films and be in that moment. So a lot of people who say, "Oh, you know, I didn't buy it because you know they're going to be another movie." Yeah,
I feel sorry for them.
Yeah,
Let's just suspend our disbelief. Isn't that why we're at the movies?
Exactly. It's like that shouldn't matter. It's like you got to be in the moment, and those moments were extremely effective.
You know, people say that though, like, "Oh no, there's going to be another movie," so I was never worried about it. But of all the theater showings that I went to, every fucking theater exit was the somberest fucking procession out of that theater where nobody talked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Brad.
Do you think they're just going to pull out the vacuums? Like, what do you do when half of the planet is dust?
What if you mixed your dust with other people's dust?
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Like, I don't know.
We'll see in a few months. Shit, it's right around the corner.
Yeah,
Hey, is that Thanos pose where he's assless, bare ass? That's an internet thing, right? Not a trailer thing.
No.
Yeah.
Not
What
a
did I say?
I said not a Thanos.
Not a Thanos thing.
Oh,
okay. Well, more of that though.
Think Thanos.
Do you think
Yeah,
Thanos poops?
that's what it was. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody poops.
Okay.
All right.
That means he wipes. Unless he doesn't wipe.
What if he just
He
snaps?
just snaps.
Wow, Brad, you're number 4.
Just disintegrates.
I don't know how to follow that.
That is what I would use the Infinity Gauntlet for.
I think he's so regular, like that. It's like
Yeah.
just he barely even has to. He does because it's the right thing to do, but each time he's just like perfectly clean.
Classic, logical, ethical approach to poop from Thanos.
All right, B, you're number 4.
My number 4 is the only movie on this list that has always remained in this spot. It's Lynn Ramsey's You Were Never Really Here. I am here with Sophia. This is easily one of my favorite films of the year. Yeah, Brian talked about it on his Not Top 10. Joaquin Phoenix as this shattered human who is just crumbling because of the violence that he has experienced and perpetrated. And the way that Lynn Ramsey chooses to show or not show that deterioration and the power that he has to inflict on others, I think is incredible. And it's an incredibly brief movie. It's 88 minutes, something like that. And so much information is being delivered to you in frames of film that last milliseconds. And, there's so many cutaways that you have to watch this movie to know who Joe is and how Joe got to this place. And it's a thrilling cinematic achievement. And Joaquin Phoenix is great as usual. Wonderful beard. Great beard acting. But I think the person that I'm the most enamored with in this movie is Lynn Ramsey as the director. And of all the movies on my list, Mandy comes close, Hereditary's close, but I feel like this is 100% succeeds on direction. Not to take away from Boots Riley and what he did as a director and Sorry to Bother You, but that's a whole picture movie, right? It's everything that's going on with that. The reason I love You Were Never Really Here is Lynn Ramsey alone.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm due for a rewatch. Hearing you and Brian talk about it, now I'm really excited to check that movie out again. Do you have it on Blu-ray?
I do not.
God damn.
I have it.
Of course he does.
Yeah. I'll bring it over and you can watch it because I think you'll pull something from it. I mean, especially just the idea of the trauma that Joaquin Phoenix's character goes through in that film. It's just
it's a great rewatch.
Yeah. Rewatching it just hit me in a completely different way. And like you were saying, Brad, that final scene just, whoo, yeah.
All right, great pick, B. Other B, your number 4.
All right, so my number 4 is going to be Jim Cummings' Thunder Road.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of that movie, for the reasons that have already been discussed. I think his performance is phenomenal. And I don't say that lightly. I think what he did performatively in those movies is one of the best performances of the year, and it's certainly at least one of the most intense character studies, at least that he had to do to figure out how to make all of those emotional leaps from sentence to sentence. And the construction of that could have just as easily turned into a silly send-up movie that was just kind of poking fun at somebody going through that scenario. But by taking the time that he did to explore those, I think he turned it into something much more impactful. And that attention to detail, I think, is what draws me to it. There aren't too many movies on the big screen where I see a Southern person portrayed on the big screen, where there's not a lot of caricature work that goes into who they are. I grew up in the South, and I'm very familiar with the ups and downs of the South and and growing up in the South. There's some well-known issues to be explored, but it always kind of bugs me, when you see somebody who is from the South. It's such an easy go-to auditory reference to poke fun with the accents and things like that. In point of fact, that's why I got turned off to Tokyo Drift the first time I watched that movie, because I thought that he was making fun of characters with Alabama accents. When I found out that was his natural accent, I turned way around on that movie. But I think that what Jim Cummings captures very well is that, you know, you grow up in the South, and like we talk a lot about toxic masculinity in the culture today, and kind of what that looks like across the board. And I think that that's something that's very prevalent in the South, and I think it's something that I've grown up around and has impacted me significantly in the way that you are taught that you should feel and express your emotions and the way that you should engage people around them. I don't think it's isolated to the South by any stretch, but I think that we kind of have our own flavor of it. But to see a character thoroughly explore what it means to be put in that pressure cooker of emotion when you are not allowed to express a release to let out some of that tension, and there's no way for you to do it other than by just completely falling apart and losing your cool. I found it to be very relatable, and I found it to be very well thought out and representative of at least what it's like to experience intense emotion and not have anywhere to put them, and what that can do to your life and to your relationships, and the way that that can fuck with your prioritization of work and family and children and all of those things. And I don't think I've cried through any other movie this year, like literally start to fucking end. Nonstop tears from me, some of which were from laughter. Like, watch the trailer to this movie. Like, that scene is funny as shit. It is also deeply affecting and like incredibly like engaging on multiple emotional fronts to watch. But from beginning to end, you would not think he would be able to maintain that pace and that intensity and that level of effort, but he does. And then you throw in the fact that he wrote it, and he was also a first-time director while he's putting it together. I think it's a really profound piece of work, and I'm incredibly impressed with what he was able to put forward. And if he wants to make a fucking 3D werewolf movie about a father-daughter relationship, I'm going to be there with Claire on opening day to see it.
That's what he wants to do next?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
That was my reaction, too. I was like, okay. But also
3D.
kind of okay. And yeah, let's do it. But yeah, so that's my number 4 pick.
All right. My number 4 is Steven Spielberg's personal love letter to my childhood and adulthood, truth be told, Ready Player One.
Yeah.
I started with the ColecoVision, then Atari 2600, the NES, the SNES, the Sega Genesis. Then I moved on to the Nintendo 64, the Dreamcast, the first PlayStation, PlayStation 2, 3, and 4. Also had the first Xbox second. I have the Xbox One X now. So I'm a gamer. I have VR. I love RoboCop. I love Spaceballs. I love Cowboy Bebop. I love King Kong. I love Voltron. I love Gundam. I love all the references that were in Steven Spielberg's realization of this book, this Ready Player One book that came out a few years ago. My theatrical experience with the film was one that I rarely have. I've been fortunate enough to have it maybe 2 or 3 times in theaters this year, and I'm not talking about my rewatches of Ready Player One. There are a few other films that have touched something inside of me that was started long time ago when I was a kid. And you know, with the realization of the virtual world, and even outside of that, outside of all the references, you know, Mark Rylance's character and how he felt socially inadequate in the real world, and so he dove into a virtual world of his own creation, his perfect utopia that started out as, you know, to be something for him to escape the real world, but he ended up using it to create a world for others like himself. You know, it speaks to the whole idea of this geek, this nerd who felt like an outcast, who felt like he didn't belong, creating a community that was inclusive. He didn't care who you were, what you do, what you did. He said, but here's a place that we can all come and all are accepted, all are welcome. Girl, boy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you like this game or that game. It doesn't matter if you like movies instead of games. Like, there's something for you here. You can be whoever you want to be. And that idea, especially today in 2018 within our geek culture, is something that I wish more nerds and more geeks, not the good ones, but you know the ones I'm talking about, the ones that are sending death threats to Ryan Johnson, the ones that are just being assholes because you love a character that maybe they don't like, or you play a game that they don't play. I wish our real life geek community could mirror what Mark Rylance was striving for, what his character was striving for in this future society. He wanted everyone to come and be who they felt they couldn't be in the real world. And the fact I live in a world now that does not like for you to be who you want to be, I can't help but long for a utopia like that. And when I go online and I play games, yeah, sometimes you deal with trolls, but other times I connect with people who are on the other side of the world. And that person who's on the other side of the world, who speaks a different language, he likes the same thing that I like. And we have a match, and then we give each other a high five virtually, and then we part ways. I take a positive experience away from a stranger who's on the other side of the earth that I may not ever have connected with in any form or fashion had it not been for this virtual world. There's something to be said about that. And then the fact that, in this one game, this movie is like, it's like the Avengers movie of not even just video games, but every pop culture thing that I love. Like when you see Thor and Iron Man and the Hulk and Captain America in the same shot for the first time, there's a scene where Voltron's line is in the same scene as Mechagodzilla and is in the same scene with a Gundam. Like, that shit is nuts to me. And they're on planet Doom, which is the planet from Voltron. That's everything that I grew up with, in not only in one movie, but in one scene, in one shot. And, as a kid, I would have never thought in a million years that I would get to see that realized in live action on the big screen. You got Ninja Turtles fighting next to Mortal Kombat characters, fighting next to Overwatch characters, and that's a first-person shooter that's recent years anyway, for people who don't know. So there's old school and new school, and it's saying all of this, all of it matters, all of it's important, all of it is special, and it all is treated with respect. And that's my biggest takeaway from it, is that Steven Spielberg, this big geek, this big nerd who went on to do tremendous things, is saying that, I respect all of these things, and I'm going to show it the respect and love it deserves, and it's all cool. It's all good. And in reality, it is, and I appreciate Ready Player One for that. And that fucking Shining sequence.
Yep.
God damn, man.
It's pretty good.
Like, was totally not expecting that, but the way that is introduced and how it plays out, it doesn't need to be said that Steven Spielberg is a master filmmaker, a master craftsman, and how he integrates that into the film about video games and geek culture and movie culture, I just found phenomenal. And so, yeah, one of the most fun times I've had in the theater was my watch and rewatches of this film in 3D. Just amazing to me. And that's, as a nerd, as a geek, young and old, this is what I want from those type of films, for my geek-centered films. So yeah, that's my number 4. Jill Chandler, I can pronounce that name. Yay! Shout out to Jill. Thank you for having a pronounceable name. She mirrors David's sentiment in that Blind Spotting. She just copied his quote, and I'll repeat it. Blind Spotting, and it wasn't really that close. My first response after seeing the film: this is why art is important. Yeah, and like my previous response, that is correct. Great pick, Jill. Brian,
yeah,
you're number 3.
All right, so my number 3, well, like I said, my number 3 and my number 2 could have flip-flopped easily. On any given day, they probably will. But right now, my number 3 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So yeah, man. Oh goodness, what can I say that hasn't already been said about this movie? So let's start with the animation. The animation style. A lot of people talk about the animation of this film and how it's been really groundbreaking for cinema and something that we've never seen before. And I can attest to that. Especially the way they use like the 3D effect for depth of field and rack focusing, the way they use 3D animation with doing hand-drawn 2D animation over the characters to really make them pop and stand out from the backgrounds, I think is pretty amazing. It's just something cinematically that we've never seen done before, and I think that's pretty groundbreaking. And especially the end sequence and the way that sequence kind of mirrors the graffiti art that we see previously in the film, and the way they're able to incorporate that type of graffiti art into the climax of the film, I think is pretty fantastic. But after that, what really the thing that I really kind of respond to in this film is the character work and the emotional depth that's being done in this movie with all these characters of Miles Morales and all the side characters that they're able to kind of breathe life into. When you see characters like the legacy characters like Peter Parker, or even the villains like Kingpin, and you see the motivations for why Kingpin is doing what he's doing, you understand, you sympathize with that character, a villain of this piece. You sympathize with him. When Peter B. Parker, seeing a middle-aged Peter Parker and seeing him at the lowest part of his life, and being able to connect with him and feeling sorry for him and really wanting him to do better and to do better for himself. The character of Spider-Gwen, to see a female heroine who has this strength and also provides this guidance for Miles Morales. And Miles Morales, who, to me, I think has probably one of the best hero journey stories that I've seen in quite some time on screen. The connection that he has with his family, with Uncle Aaron, with his father, with his mother, the stuff that we see, the fact that he is conflicted and his own insecurities about wearing the mask, becoming Spider-Man. I mean, all these things resonate really well. And a lot of that is due through the character work. We talk a lot about voice acting. The voice acting in this is impeccable. I mean, everything is down to a T, the way they're able to bring out a lot of these moments that Miles has with his father, with his Uncle Aaron, played by Brian Tyree Henry and Mahershala Ali, respectively. They do such great work. I don't know, it's just, and then two of the moments that really just hit me the hardest, of course, is when he does become Spider-Man, the leap of faith moment. And then the end of the film, too, when he tells Peter Parker that he has to go home. You know, when Peter B. Parker doesn't want to leave. He's the one that's going to think that he has to save the day. But really, you see the reason that he's doing that is because he's scared himself of wanting to go home. And Miles tells him, like, look, you got to face your fears. You have to take that leap of faith the same way you told me I had to take it. Just all that stuff just really works in such a profound way. The music, the sound, the score. I talk about Dan Pemberton. He's a composer that I've been put on notice of him with King Arthur. I love his score for King Arthur, and he does some incredible work in this one. The way he's able to incorporate turntable scratching is incredible. This movie is an experience. Like, going to see this movie is probably the best cinematic experience that you'll have all year. And that's the only way I could describe to people. Like, you have to see this movie, and you have to see it in the cinema, because it's unlike anything that you're going to see on screen at any point this year. It's absolutely a phenomenal film. I love this movie.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Wife Dork.
Yes.
Your number 3.
My number 3 is a movie that's already been mentioned because it is beautiful and lovely, and you can learn so much about yourself from it, and that is Paddington 2.
Yeah.
So, of course, I echo all of the sentiments that Brad has about this movie.
Will you use the word incredible?
I think the movie is incredible. I don't credit at all. Aesthetically, it's so beautiful. I just, and the message, of course, is part of my life's ideology, and to see that reflected on the screen, I find just so fulfilling. At its root, Paddington is a story about a fish out of water. He is an immigrant from Peru. He is not a human. He is a bear, and he is just trying to do the best he can. But, you know, there is a lot of misunderstanding between the bear culture and the human culture. And a lot of progress was made in the first film as he becomes integrated into the Brown family and then integrated into his neighborhood. And this second film does carry forward that story, particularly in the beginning of the film when it's time for him to get a job, and, you know, he tries to help at the barber shop, but his inability to, because he's so just kind and polite, his inability to say no has him giving someone a really unfortunate haircut. And but
I've seen Paddington 2.
What?
Because he fucks the guy's hair up in the back.
That's the first?
No, that's Paddington 2.
That's Paddington 2?
I think that's in the trailer, though.
It is.
Oh,
Okay,
maybe that's
good.
not true. Okay,
He
sorry.
puts the hair back by putting some marmalade on there.
But I love how the film kind of turns into this mystery film movie with the introduction of Hugh Grant's character and how he is also trying to get the book because he wants to uncover the treasure, and the Brown family is trying to figure out who this dastardly clan of villains could possibly be. And I find some of the most beautiful parts of the movie are what happens in the prison, because this is a place where Paddington knows what prisons are, and he could have gone into that situation with a lot of fear and a lot of judgment. But despite who these guys are, and they managed to round up some pretty scary looking villains. Grumbles. Despite how different these people are, he treats them with the same amount of respect he would treat anybody else. And in doing so, he makes the community in the prison a better place. And when the Brown family comes to visit, you can see Mrs. Brown also model that same behavior. Like, she goes in and she goes, well, Paddington says, is presenting his friends, and I'm really excited to meet him. And of course, Mr. Brown is like, these are dangerous villains. And I think that that's like such a good gag with him switching off the light to have a private conversation with the rest of the Browns, and them going like, we can still hear you. The microphone switch is on the other side. Also, I think aesthetically, the prison break sequence is super fun. A lot of parallels actually in my mind can be drawn to that Wes Anderson
Grand Budapest
Hotel. But I think it's just wonderful and super fun. And I like the fact that really what Paddington wanted to do was show appreciation for someone that he loved, for his aunt, and he wanted to do a kind gesture. But because everybody in the community loved Paddington so much, and he had done so much to, he reminded the guy to get his keys, and he always had an extra marmalade sandwich for the, girl, and helping the lady study.
Well, it shows how kindness spreads.
Yeah, it just spreads, and because they love him so much, they extend his gesture even greater than he could have imagined. So I like it's just a feel-good movie, and it makes you want to go out and be a better person and be a better bear and eat some goddamn marmalade. Yum.
In regards to your question, Brian, to Brad earlier about the director, possibly are not coming back. Lisa, let me ask you: if Wes Anderson were to do Paddington 3, how would you feel about that?
I would feel amazing.
Totally different. I disagree.
Really?
I think.
I knew Brad was going to say that.
Well, Wes Anderson has a distance to his eye. Like, not to say that his characters there aren't examples of warmth and love and familial bond in his films, but there's what he excels at is an artificiality, and there's a barrier to that artificiality that while Paddington 2 also has that dioramic storybook look, the barrier is removed. He invites you in. His images invite you in, and I think you're always watching an Anderson movie, from a few rows back.
I think
From
it
the
would be
human in charge of a dollhouse.
so sweet. I think that it would be something different, but I think that it would still be super fun. Darren's agreeing with me silently, which is not very effective on a podcast.
I agree.
This is not. We should do a whole episode in pantomime.
Yes.
And the listeners would just hear the whoosh of our sleeves.
We can try it. Brad, you're number 3.
All right, this is where things get tricky.
Uh-oh.
I think I know what your top 3 are.
Oh, you think you know what my top 3 is?
I don't know the order, but I think I know what your top 3
okay,
are.
well, let's, all of these could have been one and were one at some point in the year. My number 3 is Black Panther.
Okay.
You guys have talked about it plenty already today. I think the only thing I would add to it is one of the elements I really enjoyed was how T'Challa at the center of this movie is listening to many, many other characters. He is a student to several teachers.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Killmonger, T'Chaka, Nakia, Okoye, all of them are steering him to a path that he has to take that throne, and he has to be his own king, and he has to recognize that gatekeeping in remaining Wakandan, in Wakanda forever, in the phrase Wakanda forever, you are also committing an evil in how precious you're treating this place.
Absolutely.
And you can ignore the outside world, but if you do that, you are going to create animosity, enemies, and it's going to come back to you eventually. And I love how he's a very passive character T'Challa is, and I appreciate that. And to what Lisa was talking about with the Avengers, and learning through failing, that is one of the great things about Marvel comics and Marvel characters, is that our relatability with them is how we see them fail the way that we have failed, and how we strive to succeed through our failings. And that's what I think Black Panther does really well. And I think Avengers Infinity War does well as well.
All right.
Ooh. And it's beautiful. I mean, like Coogler, Rachel Morrison, it's a stunningly beautiful looking movie. Not just the images, but the production design, the costuming, like Ruth Carter.
Warrior Falls looks.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We should talk about Rachel Morrison. Like, she is one of the great cinematographers of
For
our
sure.
time, on fucking account of the fact that she is.
Yeah.
Accurate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Billy, your number 3.
So my number 3 is Blind Spotting.
Oh.
Nice. Almost exactly for the reason that Dave Lawson stated, which is this is the purpose for art.
Yep.
I think the thing that I connected with Thunder Road was seeing myself on the screen as a product of a Southern upbringing, and I think that's nice and something that I don't often get to see. I talk a lot about the importance of seeing yourself on the screen, of seeing everybody's story on the screen, because that's what we do as people. We tell stories, and we use those stories to improve our appreciation of the world around us and understand the things that are happening around us that are sometimes outside of our perspective, sometimes foreign to us, sometimes something that we disagree with or whatever. But we learn through stories, and we share knowledge and information, and we gain perspective through stories. And I think that blind spotting as an expression of art and the story that it tells is one of the best things that we have seen in years as far as storytelling goes. I think, as a person who's not from Oakland and has never lived in California, what an amazing, interesting thing it must be to see a movie like Blind Spotting that is so profoundly and deeply defined by being a product of Oakland and what that experience is like, but also turning it into something that anybody can relate to, that tackles challenging issues that are pressing not just in Oakland, California, but in, you know, New York and every state in the union. You know, as far, I was just thinking a state as far away from California as I could think of, but I mean, it's everywhere. These are the challenges that we are all facing. And I think the interesting thing about sharing more representative, more nuanced stories is that you do start to get a better grasp of the things that we all face universally and the things that we all face in specific. And the more that we understand about those things, the more that I think that we can, you know, work together to improve things. But, you know, Rafael Casal and David Diggs, holy shit. Like what they put together as far as their script and the performance that they bring to the table, I think it's phenomenal. And I like the idea of being so lyrical through the course of their entire performance is astounding to me. But even Casal's character calls it out in the movie. You know, people don't listen to you unless you say it pretty. And, you know, like I learned that lesson moving from the South to a more north, not that Virginia's not the fucking South, but they are. They don't think they are in Northern Virginia, but they are. But like I moved up here, and you know I spoke with a Southern accent when I first moved up here in 2000, and I caught a lot of shit just for speaking with a Southern accent, and I got talked to like I was a dummy or didn't understand how to do things because of the way that I would pronounce the words that come out of my mouth, and you know that sucked. Like you know, that was a shitty thing to experience, and it's not a huge hurdle for my life, but it's definitely something that's defined my perspective of how I interact with other people. Like, goddamn, just don't be shitty to people about how they sound when they talk. Like that's the easiest thing that you can do when you're affording basic human decency to a person, and that is how I learned that lesson in my life. But like then you take that, like my individual personal experience with that particular lesson, and you look at it from Casal and David Diggs' point of view. Like Brian, you talked about code switching with the hate that you give, and how you have to put yourself into one frame of reference for one group of people and putting yourself into another, because otherwise communication doesn't happen because people are shitty and they don't listen. And when he says, and you know, like people won't listen if I don't say it pretty, I found that to be something that I connected immediately to with my own experience, but then could see what he was trying to articulate and what that would be like from being a person from Oakland, where like both of these guys are smart dudes who understand what's going on around them. They're not dummies by any stretch of the imagination, but the way that they get looked at, the way that they're perceived, and the way that he feels like he has to represent in a particular way when he talks and the words that comes out of his mouth, like that's a heartbreaking thing to have to see, but it's reality. Anyways, I like just the ease in which they kind of work through those issues in the movie. Like they make it look easy by the way that they put it on screen. If you guys haven't seen Rafael Casal's performance of his poem Monster, which like talks about it talks about an experience like growing up around a lot of violence where you lose people around you, how you steadily become numb to the violence and the things that you see around you, and how that can break you as a person, how that can make it so that you can't express emotions in the way that we need to express emotions as people to overcome our problems. That performance was the seed that caught the producer's eyes, and then that's the seed that started the relationship to the product that eventually became Blind Spotting, the movie that came out. And like, I don't know. I could go on. I got thousands of words that I would like to say about this movie, but it's amazing and I love it, and that's why it's my pick.
Oh, believe me, I know. I could talk about this movie forever.
All right. My number 3 is another film that has already been mentioned on the podcast, and it is The Night Comes for Us.
Yeah.
When I was like, right now, I watch any and all manner of film, all genres, multiple genres. But I was introduced to movies at a very young age by my father, and primarily most of the films that either I was attracted to or that stuck with me were either in the science fiction, fantasy, and or action genre. They had some action in it of some sorts. As a kid, I would not sit down and devote an hour and a half or 2 hours to a drama or a comedy. I was grown on action, whether it be cartoon action or live action, whether it be Bruce Lee, whether it be Godzilla kicking something or someone's ass. Action. And it wasn't until I got older. I mean, it's been said on the podcast before, like, I am where I am now because of John Woo's Hard Boiled. My life took an unfathomably dramatic turn because of that film. I would end up in the army and end up on the other side of the earth because of that movie, because of action movies. I got an interest in filmmaking because of action movies. And it wasn't until I became an adult and more versed in the language of cinema that I would devote in time and learn and appreciate other genres more respectively. And so action movies are a huge part of me and who I am and what I love about cinema. And, you know, I don't want to rehash a lot of stuff that we've said about this movie, that I've said about the movie, and comparing it to, you know, other action films of today and the past and bringing up The Raid and all that. I just will say this movie from top to bottom, you know, the runtime seems almost unable to contain the action that Timo put into this film. You know, previously the movie that him and Kimo had done together, known as the Mo Brothers, was Headshot, and I'd seen Headshot after the Raid films, and you know, knowing that they were of that same ilk as Gareth Evans from Indonesia, you know, I had, and also Iko is in that film as well, as is Julia Estelle, as is Bat Boy. So a bunch of the cast from the Raid carried over to Headshot. And while I did not feel that movie lived up to the Raid films, I found it enjoyable. And so, but that movie, if you've seen or have not seen Headshot, you know, we talk about the brutality and that Timo has on display in The Night Comes for Us. With like Headshot is, I remember remarking that while it's not as good as the Raid, there are some kills in that movie that I found rougher than the ones in the Raid. I mean, that fight sequence in the police station where there's a knife put through the table and the guy's head is put down to the, oh my, nuts. The massacre on that bus, that transit bus in the middle of the road, like that shit was rough. Even that fight sequence, the way that the punches are depicted between Iko and the main guy at the end, I found pretty effective. But as you all said, like Timo topped himself and almost damn near everyone else with The Night Comes for Us. And I can't think of another action film in recent years that I found as exhilarating. And I don't know if a lot of it came from that initial screening in Fantastic Fest, which happens to be my favorite cinematic theatrical screen, like favorite, you know, moment in a movie theater, like just being in the theater when everyone's reacting to the appropriate beats, knowing that Timo is there and he's getting the responses he probably hoped he would get when they were making this movie. You know, just and I talked about earlier when I was talking about wanting to see new things when I go to the movie, when I spoke about Sorry to Bother You. And this movie, like, you know, as an action film junkie, I constantly feed myself these movies from foreign cinema mostly. And when you watch almost every other action movie, whether it be domestic or foreign, after a while, you're going to start to see some repetitiveness. You're going to start to see things become stale, and then the raid films come and inject a shot of adrenaline in our arms, and then a night comes for us and injects a shot of adrenaline in your fucking throat. And like Brad, you were saying, like the last shot of that movie being like your favorite shot of the year or whatever. I'm not mad at that, because part of me imagines that because of Joe Taslim's character in that film, how he just was the fucking Energizer Bunny, a part of me doesn't even think he died. That motherfucker leaned over into the passenger seat, drove through those motherfuckers, and part 2 is just waiting to happen with him sitting up with a gunshot wound in his shoulder and his neck. He's shaking off, waiting to kill somebody
They
else.
say they've got a part 2.
And
Part 2 is the Fast and Furious 9.
I can't wait to see what Timo and Joe does with this film. I need more of Julie Estelle. Actually, if he dies and then she's the star of the next movie, that's how you make that immediately better than the first movie to me. And the other thing that I have that excites me the most is knowing that since Timo comes from that group of guys coming out of Indonesia, and him setting this bar, like Brian says, that smacks you in the face, Gareth Evans saying, okay, I see what you did there. I can't go out like that. And so we have to do the Raid 3, and I got to kick shit up several notches. And what that's going to be for action cinema and fans like myself, that makes me giddy with excitement, because I can't even fathom like how you top The Night Comes for Us. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing achievement in action cinema. And if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and check it out. So yeah, that's my number 3. All right, B. Oh yeah, you're right. So next we have Shara.
Yeah.
Yay. All right, she says, and I quote, "I'm torn between Mandy, Into the Spider-Verse, and Sorry to Bother You. And I love all three for almost the same reasons. They were completely new, fresh, unique viewing experiences. I cannot believe in a year that I saw 2 of the best MCU movies ever released that this is what I'm going to go with, but damn, what a great year for film." Also, 100% true. I'm going to spoil it right now. I don't have any MCU movies on my list. And it is not because there were no great MCU movies. It's just 2018 has been a phenomenal year in cinema. And all those movies share are great movies. Mandy, Into the Spider-Verse, and Sorry to Bother You. All 3 of those actually, if not on my top 10, at least one of them was on my not top 10, which was Mandy. Great movie. Yeah, great picks. Thank you for sharing. All right, B, your number 2.
All right, so my number 2, like I was saying, it's kind of flip-flop back and forth, but my number 2 for me is A Quiet Place. I absolutely love this movie. To me, this might be my favorite directed film. I think John Krasinski did a phenomenal job directing this movie.
Directorial debut?
Kind of. He's directed movies before.
Really?
But yeah, he directed 2 smaller films before. But this, you could consider this as a directorial debut, because this is the film that has definitely put him on notice to Hollywood as far as him being a director to look out for.
Yeah.
He is attached to do the sequel.
Oh shit!
Yeah, which will be out sometime in 2020, I think. But I just think it's a technical achievement with what he was able to do with A Quiet Place. The way he was able to take this simple yet high concept idea and really make the audience, especially as an experience watching this in the movie theater, make this an experience where he made the audience conscious of every single bag crinkling, every nacho chewing, every throat cough, everything that you would do in the theater. You were really conscious of that, especially in the opening scene of this movie. And with that cold opening, it works twofold, where you see the threat of the monsters, and you also set up the guilt and the pain and the shame that this family has with what happens in the beginning of this film. And going to Lisa's point last week when talking about trying to create a sense of normalcy for these kids and for the family, Really, that's the heart of the movie to me, is that family dynamic, and John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, who are married in real life. So it brings a sense of authenticity to this role as well. But for them, the idea of wanting to protect their kids and create this environment where they feel like they can still have some sense of normalcy, I find that to be incredibly impactful for the film. And Melissa sent, oh goodness, I can't remember her name, and my internet is not up, but the daughter and the relationship that she has with her father, with her also bringing in that guilt that she has for what happened in the beginning of the film. And even Emily Blunt feels guilt, and John Krasinski feels guilt. They all are feeling all this stuff that, they have to kind of work through. And I think that even as a family drama, this movie works just as well as any other type of family drama that you would see in any other type of movie. And that scene when he tells her that he loves her and that he's always loved her, such an emotionally impactful moment that I've seen all year round. And you talk about final shots, Brad. For me, this is my favorite final shot of a film. When she cocks that rifle, it just sings to me. I love it. I love that moment. So yeah, I mean, A Quiet Place, man. I absolutely love this film.
Millicent Simmons.
Millicent Simmons. Thank you, Brad.
I'd be damned if this movie did not have one of the best trailers of the year. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So good. It was one of those trailers when I first saw it. I was like, I gotta see this movie. I could not wait to see that movie because of how they set everything up with them being quiet and signing at the table, and then the lamp gets knocked over accidentally, and in the theater, it's like the movie. It's in short form. It's the loudest thing ever. And you're like, oh shit! And then you hear the shit up. Yeah. Great trailer. All right, great pick. Wife Dork.
Yes.
Shit, you're down to your number 2.
Yes. My number 2 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I just loved this movie. The 27th of December was my birthday.
Yay.
And I chose to rewatch that movie. Brad asked me, he was like, how about, what was that movie?
Welcome to Marwen.
Oh, yeah. He was like, let's watch Welcome to Marwen. I was like, not on my birthday. I do not want to see that movie on my birthday. And I'm just so stoked at how wonderful this Miles Morales film is. We talk a lot about how wonderful the MCU is, and we love it. But there is, they are still a little bit behind when it comes to diversity. By far, still over half of the main player Avengers are white males, and I like the fact that this movie takes on diversity head on, and the end message of the film is like, so if you've been watching all of these superhero movies and you were worried because none of the superheroes have looked like you, you can wear the mask. Anyone can wear the mask. If you take anything away from this movie, you can be a superhero. And I think that was a message that was necessary to say. And I think that they had a lot of fun with choosing different spider people to play with.
Yeah.
But I love that Miles was the center of this movie, and that he had to rise to the occasion of being a superhero. That he faced his limitations and got over a lot of fear to become the Miles that we see at the end of the movie, with the super individualized Spider-Man suit that had his signature on it. I just thought that was so beautiful. I love the idea of multiverses. I talk about this every time I talk about this movie. I'm recapping my sentiments that you've already heard. But I love the fact that one of the messages of the film is any day can be the day that you become your best self. And we see that in Miles' story where for a lot of the movie, he's not ready to be Spider-Man. He doesn't have his powers under control, and he doesn't know what is going to be the thing that makes him ready. But he just keeps trying, and he wants to do the right thing. He wants to live up to his promise to the blonde Peter Parker. He wants to live up to his own expectations of what he thinks a superhero could and should be. But it was the affirmation of his father that really turned things around for him and opened him up to be his best self. And with Peter B. Parker, it was seeing how hard Miles worked to be ready and how Miles was able to turn it around to be his best self. And he learned a lot from interacting with Miles, and he was able to take that home with him back to his home universe so he can start turning the things he had given up on, his health, his relationship with MJ. He's now going to turn those things around because any day you could be your best self. And with the multiverse, the version of your best self is out there. I honestly believe that there is an ideal me that this version of me is aspiring to, who's made all of the best choices and has lived up to all of her potential. But all I can do here in this universe with all the decisions I've made up until this point is just let this be the moment that I choose to be my best self, and let those other universe Lisas have those other decisions that I didn't make. So I love this movie, and I love the fact that it's now in the fold of things I can watch and rewatch and get that high off of. Yeah. It's like when we were going through on the not top 10, we were going through my 15 through 11, and there were all the horror movies, and now we're at the top of my list, and my true self is coming out. I'm warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And I like a warm and fuzzy film.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great pick.
Thank you.
Film. All right, B. Let's do it. You're number 2.
My number 2 is a film that's already been talked about a couple times on this episode. It's Avengers: Infinity War. Yeah. The only thing I'd like to go back to that Thor moment. The movie opens, in Thor Ragnarok, Thor finally takes the throne. He becomes the king that his father always wanted him to, and he was so reluctant to be. Yeah. And then Avengers: Infinity War opens with Thanos showing up, and once again, if Asgard wasn't already pretty badly beat by the end of Ragnarok, it's practically decimated by Thanos in the opening film. Yeah. And how Avengers: Infinity War, Thor and Thanos mirror each other for most of that movie. And because you're an Avengers fan, you're like, oh, I'm watching Thor going to come back from this bad beat. It's going to be so awesome. He's going to go to Nidavellir and get his Stormbreaker and kick some ass. But while he's going to Nidavellir, Thanos is going to Boromir and hanging out with the Red Skull and killing his daughter and taking the Soul Stone. And Thor gets his Stormbreaker. And that moment in the theater, Brian, you talk about this is the moment that mirrors in Avengers I'm Always Angry and Vision becoming worthy or revealing that he is worthy. Yeah. And here's, he drops down to Wakanda. He's got Rocket on his shoulder. He's got Groot with him. Yeah. They're going to kick a whole bunch of Space Dog ass. And I remember being in the theater and watching Thor throw Stormbreaker towards Thanos, and there was this guy, and he was like, "Yeah!" because he'd been bred on all these victorious
Was it Jason
Thor
Momoa?
moments, and I know that this is Thanos' movie. Thanos is going to be victorious. What Thor has just revealed is that he is impotent. And Stormbreaker means nothing because he doesn't aim for the head. He hits his chest, and when he's there on the ground, his rage takes over, and he says, I told you, you die for that. And Thanos snaps. And if even in that moment, if Thor had just not been an asshole, if Thor hadn't been just his Asgardian self and just raised that axe up a little bit rather than take the beat to brag in the face of his enemy, there would have been a different story. Same with Peter Quill. You know, if Peter Quill had been able to contain his human emotions and his rage in that moment, it would have been a different story. And the idea that Doctor Strange has looked at all these possibilities and seen that the only way to win is to fail. You know, that's like the great Marvel thing. You've got to fail. You got to get hit to stand back up. And I don't know.
That's great.
I've watched Avengers Infinity War more than any other movie this year.
Same.
And just when I think I've seen all the things and thought about all the things that this movie could possibly give, like on my 10th watch, I'm watching Thor in that moment with his little bragging ritual there before the snap. You go, oh shit, fucking Thor.
Yeah, you pick up and going to something that Lisa said when she was talking about it with Captain America and Vision, where the whole thing, you know, we don't trade lives, and the fact that he would save the life of one and it cost half the universe. It kind of reminded me of another film, Mission Impossible, with Ethan Hunt and his character and how he risked his own team. I mean, it worked out in his favor, but it didn't work out in Cap's favor. But it kind of reminded me a little bit of Ethan Hunt as well from Fallout. But I just thought that was an interesting. I thought that was interesting.
And so at the end of the day, my I'm always angry moment or Vision being worthy moment is actually the final shot of Avengers Infinity War. It's Thanos' smile.
Okay.
That's the moment where it's like, this is the most pure Marvel comic moment.
Okay.
Is him going, okay, I've done it. And scene.
Yeah.
And I think what you're going to find out is that Thanos also has to learn to deal with failure too in Endgame, and that he probably is not as content as he thought he was going to be.
Interesting. Okay. Excited.
All right, Billy, your number 2.
All right, so this one has been a big part of my year, but it's The Endless.
That was this year?
Yeah.
This has been a long year.
I know. But that's Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's latest film about a couple of brothers who escape from... I guess I'm going to do the background on it because we haven't talked about it on any of these episodes of late. But a couple of brothers escape from what they purport is an alien worshipping cult and find that life on the outside is not so easy. And when one of the brothers longs to go back to something that they can relate to more, the other indulges. And what follows is a story of family and brotherly love and making connections and understanding where your place in the world is. But it's told from like a sci-fi horror perspective that I really enjoy. And it's told on a budget, which is obviously something that appeals to me in terms of what I find to be rewarding out of cinema. I think they set quite a challenge for themselves in terms of what they wanted to do by going out and just making the movie that they had the ability to make in front of them at the time. And I, in this year, have taken a lot of personal inspiration, not just from them, but from other filmmakers who, you know, like that's a big part of what Jim Cummings talks about, right? Which is to stop planning to make a movie and go make the movie that you have in front of you. Yeah. And Justin and Aaron, you know, when they talk about movie making, they say that they're movie makers, not meeting takers, right? And what that really winds up looking like is you go out and you make a movie. And they had no money, and they went out to the desert where they'd been before, and they shot a movie based on some characters that they'd done before, and they put themselves in front of the screen because that's what they had the budget for. And it works. And I think it more than just works. I think that They have yet again produced something that I find to be very stimulating and engaging in terms of the story that they put forward on the screen. A big fan of Spring. That is an all-time classic for me, but I'm also a big fan of Resolution for the same reason that they are going out and making new things or talking about things that we've seen before in ways that we definitely have not seen before. And I think that that is very much the magic of what they do, and they manage to do it on a budget. And I absolutely love their work for that. Plus, like my theatrical experience of the year is going to Maryland to intro for Dave Lawson when he was in town to do a screening of The Endless.
Oh
at a film
yeah, that
festival
was this
there.
year we did.
That was this year.
Shit.
And I sat in the back of that movie with Dave and had like the pop-up video experience as I watched through it, where Dave would just kind of lean in and be like, "No, this is what happened here. And this is the background detail for what's going on here." And I usually hate people fucking talking through movies. Even movies that I've seen, but I just like the experience of that and getting to join in on the celebration and sharing it, being proactively sharing it with new people and being able to be kind of an ambassador for that movie, and then to just kind of sit and chill and still appreciate what it is that they're doing. Like I've really enjoyed a lot with that movie this year on a variety of different levels, and yeah, so that's my number 2.
I don't know why I keep feeling like I saw that last year.
You did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
because we saw it as part of Tribeca.
Yeah.
And then because we interviewed them last year.
Yeah.
And then it was at Fantastic Fest last year also.
Oh, okay.
It took a long time for them to find wide distribution on it. So it's the theatrical release this year, but film festival debut last year.
Okay. All right. I was gonna say, because if it was this year, like that, the revelation of the connectivity between this movie and another movie, that happening was like one of the biggest oh shit moments I've had in a long time. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like if you haven't seen the movies, go watch Resolution and go watch The Endless and go watch Spring. Like they're all great, but like
Spring.
But when they go to the cabin in the woods and they show up there and that's The Endless is linked, I was like the dude in the Matrix when Neo starts flying and catches the people and he's like, yeah, like I ate that up.
My
man.
jaw dropped. And I was because I had spoken to Dave when I was. I told him, he's like, dude, you got to watch this part, and that shit happened. It's like, holy fuck! I texted him, oh my god, I can't believe it. Anyway, great pick, Billy. Yeah. All right, my number 2. I'm gonna dedicate my number 2 to Max, because I feel so bad. A while ago, actually, it was Max's birthday. And Shar had told me about it, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do a special shout-out to Max on the next episode. I got you. And I did not do that, and I apologize. I know this is way late, but I'm going to dedicate my number 2 to you, Max, because you're great. You're my favorite listener, and I mean that. So without further ado, my number 2 is also Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I have to say, I have not struggled with top 10 or not top 10 or any other type of fistful, whatever pick, as much as I struggled with the placement of this film. So much so that leading up to right now, I was trying to determine if I was going to make it my number 2 or my number 1. I've seen the film 3 times now. I rewatched it yesterday for the first time with my daughter, and we saw it in 3D, and it was my favorite viewing of the film. Sia loved it. You know, she enjoyed it way more than I thought she would. Thought she'd like it, but she really enjoyed it, and that was all cool. But seeing it in 3D, Brian, you talked about the animation style and how the combination of cell shading and the different 2D graphic design techniques that are used in the film, how they bring out a 3D effect. I feel like the true form of this movie is in 3D, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people can't see 3D. They get headaches, or sometimes it just doesn't, the effect doesn't work for them. The brain processes visual information differently. because it was revelatory. I had already, if you looked at my Letterboxd reviews, our first screening, Brad, I gave it 5 stars, right? The second screening, 5 stars. This is a perfect film. But this watch of it was like seeing it for the first time. The sense of depth, because you have 3D rendered objects in the frame, like cars and things like that. But then you have 2D element overlays, whether it be on a character, cross hatching, and things like that. But the way the 3D enhanced everything, feel like it brought out a dynamic that just was not there in my 2D screening of the film. And everything about the characters, the character work we talked about, I don't think people talk about Shameik Moore enough in regards to his giving life to Miles. I don't know of another character this year, or at the very least in a comic book or a superhero movie, that I felt more, not necessarily empathetic toward. Miles Morales just comes across as a genuinely good human being, a good kid, a great kid. He's not a type of character that has to he's not like a Tony Stark that has to get his attitude in check, or his identity in that way, like his personality. He's just a great kid. He's smart. He's likable already from the outset. When he's walking down the street to go to school, before his dad picks him up, the kids in the neighborhood all already respond positively to him. So it's not like he needs to become Spider-Man for people to like him, or to get that type of interaction for people, to get any type of self-assurance of whatever, who he is, or if he's a cool kid. Or when he goes to the new school, he's not retreating into himself like an introvert. He's trying to reach out to new people. He's making jokes that may fall flat or whatever, but he's already a personable person. And that's something I responded to that, is different from how we've seen Peter Parker being portrayed and I know it's just two different people, but that the character of Spider-Man's alter ego been portrayed in other films. And granted, I did respond to, the version of Peter Parker who is introvert and who does, withdraw his hands up into his sleeves and put his hood up. I respond to that, but to see a fresh take on it and to see Miles already be a bright spirit, it goes to what his father was saying on the other side of that door. There's a spark in you, and I see it. I saw it from the opening of that film. The artistic ability he has as someone who likes to draw. I immediately connected to that. The song he's singing is currently my favorite song that I've been wearing out these last couple of months or whatever. There's so many things that I found enjoyable, and I focused on this particular watch of Miles because the movie is audio, sensory, visual overload. Your eye can catch and dart around the screen and catch so many different nods and homages and Easter eggs. Brian, you talk about how the ending of that film, the environment that's animated, recreates or is linked to Miles's graffiti art. Even this is what I noticed this go around. So when Uncle Aaron takes Miles down into the subway system in that abandoned area under Brooklyn to give him that wall to tag, there's a song playing that starts playing once Miles starts tagging, and it's a remix version of Black Sheep's This or That, right? Yeah. And the scratching that you mentioned that's used in the score, they're scratching the words, who's the black sheep? What's the black sheep? And so Miles feeling like a black sheep, the fact that outline that he creates is drawn, it's just black, right? It's a white outline, but in the inside it's black, it's void. And then Miles's costume at the end ultimately being black. But then they scratch in while they're saying who's the black sheep, they scratch in Run DMC's Mary Mary, and they just scratch in the word Mary, and that could either be nothing, it could fly over your head, but in my eyes it's I automatically go to Mary Jane, and maybe that's what they were going for, maybe not, but there's so much in the movie that is below the surface of just this visual stuff that you're seeing or hearing. Yeah, we've talked about, we've praised this film like so many times, and rightfully so, because it is wonderful. It is a perfect film. But I just want to say, man, like I had the hardest time. This movie flip flopped, like I said, up until it was my turn to go, because I leaving the theater yesterday, I was like, man, this is my favorite movie of the year. I have not walked out of a theater on a high like Brad. It was just like the high that I had when we saw it for the first time. And I have not had that happen before. I would go see, big MCU movies and then go do a back-to-back screening and come out of that movie. And it's never the same as that initial screening. And not saying that the second viewing is worse, it's just different. But for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I had the same feeling on my third watch as I did on my first watch. And I found that to be a testament to what Sony and the team involved were able to do. And Lisa, you talked about being how great the MCU is, but one thing this movie having over the others is representation. Another thing that I would say kind of separates this one from the MCU, and this is not a dig against the MCU, is that, again, and we talked about the medium of animation, it allows the MCU movies are, for the most part, grounded in our reality. Well, Into the Spider-Verse, because of the medium of animation, it allows them to separate themselves from that completely, and it allows it to be 100% comic book in film form in all aspects, whether it be the dialogue, the thought bubbles, the framing, and all of that. And my favorite shot of the year in any film is when, Brian, you talked about it, is when Miles, he makes that transformation. He accepts himself, and he goes to that rooftop, and it's the shot that's in the trailer where he makes that leap of faith. The glass comes off. The framing of that in 2D is gorgeous and beautiful, right? But in 3D, it was profound to me. Firstly, the profile shot, when you just see him upside down, but then they do an overhead shot, and it was breathtaking. It literally felt like I was falling with Miles.
Oh, yeah, that one shot where it follows him.
So it's like,
yeah.
It's like I'm taking a leap of faith, and my stomach drops, and then he shoots his web, and it connects, and he begins to swing, and it's giving me goosebumps now, like reliving that in my head. But in that moment in the theater, like, I'm sorry, Sia, like Sia was not there. That lady who was next to me, this lady, she was having the greatest reactions. I'm talking about from start to finish, more than any other kid in the theater. But at that moment, no one was in that theater with me. I wasn't even in the theater. I was in the sky falling with Miles. And I haven't had an exhilarating moment like that in the theater at all this year. And I've seen The Night Comes for Us in the theater this year. It is breathtaking. And it's my favorite superhero movie of the year. Yeah, I'm in love with this film. I cannot wait to watch this movie again in the theaters, but also at home.
I know. That's how I feel.
Yeah, the perfect movie. So, yeah, dedicate that to you, Max. Shout out to my man, Max.
I can't wait to hear what your number one is now.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. All right, before we get to that, we got to get to Andy Geierson. This is the last one on our list. Shout out to Andy.
Yay.
Love that guy. His favorite film of the year is BlacKkKlansman. Andy says 2 scenes solidified Spike Lee as a true artist, and it wasn't the final scene. 1, the use of faces during Kwame Ture's speech, and 2, Harry Belafonte's speech. 100% Harry Belafonte's speech. I don't think I've been as moved as I was listening to him talk. And when will we see such emotion again? You've already spoken about that, both of you, Billy and Brian, about how powerful those scenes are. And yeah, you're right, Brian. He's not wrong. 2 very strong moments in a film that has a lot to say. I miss Harry Belafonte, man. Yeah, he needs to be in more stuff. Great pick, Andy. All right, with that, Andy has ushered us into our final round, our number 1 picks for the movies of 2018. All right, Brian, set it off, man. What you got, B?
Should be obvious.
Is it?
I would think so.
What is it?
Blind Spotting.
Yeah, okay.
I absolutely love this movie. This movie, from the moment I saw it in July, has pretty much solidified its spot as my favorite film of the year. And then getting it on Blu-ray and rewatching it just further solidified how much I absolutely love this movie. Out of all the cinema that's come out on this subject matter, I think this is the one that hits me the deepest because of the way it deals with race relation and a lot of the social injustices that plagues a lot of the urban communities. It has such a personal and intimate story to tell with it. And that's what I connect with. I connect with the story of Colin, played by Daveed Diggs. And when he goes through that inciting incident of watching this black man gunned down by a police officer, to me, that opens up the narrative of the movie to really allow Daveed and Raphael, who also wrote the film and produced it, it allows them to really take that inciting incident and talk about a lot of other different themes in this movie. When you talk about the idea of gentrification of Oakland and the ever-changing landscape of Oakland, California, and having what they call transplants come in, and how that changes their neighborhood. You talk about gun violence and guns being in the home. It deals with a lot of that stuff as well. This is just a film that I can just easily talk about for days on end. I love the fact that it definitely has a comedic sensibility, but it also has like this blistering social commentary. So it's extremely entertaining, but it also leaves you with a lot of stuff to think about, and it moves you in a really, really deep way, and also makes the film rewatchable. And the last 30 minutes of this movie is probably some of the best 30 minutes that I've ever seen, starting from when they go to the party and Raphael Casal's character, Miles, gets into the fight because someone else mistakes him as one of the transplants, not understanding that he is born and bred Oakland. And then we get to the scene between Miles and Colin in that parking lot, where pretty much everything gets let out. Everything gets let out, and he explains to Miles, like, look, you are out here acting up. You're acting a fool. I'm trying to get my shit together. But yet, the way that people are always going to view me, they're always going to view me in this specific way. But with you kind of get this so-called pass because you can act a fool, but because you're white, you can kind of get away with some of these certain things that you get away with. And the whole idea of blind spotting, the whole idea, like when he has that conversation with Val about the face base, and she explains to him, the term blind spotting and what that means. And when she explains that to him, that shit was just so heartbreaking and so impactful, because I think that right there speaks to the problem that we actually have in this country, is the fact that we can't see people for who they are when we already have these preconceived notions of who they are, and not seeing them for who they really are. It's just, and then the final scene, just to talk about that a little bit. I mean, you talked about, Billy, the fact that how lyrical this movie is going throughout the whole film, and when you get to that final moment when Colin is able to confront the officer that's been haunting him for these last 3 days of his probation, and he's able to let out that anger, that rage, and that frustration that he's been feeling, that just destroyed me watching that for the first time. And to me, that represents every frustration that every minority that has been a victim of profiling, racism, prejudices, that moment just represented all that frustration that everybody was feeling. He was able to articulate that in this searing rhyme that he gave. It was just absolutely profound. I love this movie and will watch this movie for years on end. The way that I talked about Get Out from last year and a lot of these movies from this year, Blind Spotting is it's a classic. It's an absolute classic. I love this movie.
That end sequence after he gets done with his rhyme and he walks out, and Ethan Embry's police officer is like, well, I didn't mean to. And Rafael Casals, are you sure?
Are you sure?
And then he, like, that I was like, God damn, because that to me is even to the core of like the insidiousness of what this is that maybe police officer Ethan Embry genuinely thinks I did not mean to, but like, are you sure?
Are you sure? Exactly. And something that the director said that they specifically did in this film is the way they use the camera with eye level and eye contact, where throughout the film you're never really the characters are always looking to the side or not looking directly, but in that final scene he puts the camera right in front of him, so he's speaking directly to the camera. He's looking at his oppressor right in the eye. And even in that moment, as you talked about, when he says, I didn't mean to do it, if you look, Rafael Casal, he looks at the camera and he says, are you sure?
Yep.
And I just thought that was just a brilliant stroke as a director to put those little nuances in the movie. This movie is absolutely brilliant. I love this movie.
All right. Wife Dork.
Yes. Mine is not a surprise. My number one is Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
This movie was just such a revelation to me. It falls under the category of these angry films that have so much to say and are expressing a lot of cultural hurt. And it is absurdist, but the way that he builds to that absurdity has the solidity of a well-constructed argument. The main character, played by Lakeith Stanfield, Cassius, at the beginning of the film, he's in a situation where he just cannot. There's just not the opportunity for him to get his shit together. All of the jobs are being soaked up into these worry-free things. There's just not jobs available. He's living in his uncle's garage, and his uncle is about to lose his house, and he can't pay his rent. And in a consumerist culture, when you don't have any money and you don't have a job, like, what... you just don't have a sense of your own value as a person. And so when he starts, when he finally gets the job at Regal View, and Langston tells him the secret of, well, why don't you just use your white voice? That was a small compromise for him as a person, so that he could provide. And he found himself getting success by making this compromise of who he was. And then, as he started really making sales, he started going like, well, he started being recognized for something that he's good at. And he starts being a power caller. And he's called upon to compromise himself even further, and for a certain number of zeros behind, for a certain number of digits on his check every week, he's willing to do that. But for him, it really is a death of 1,000 cuts. And so each compromise is followed by a further compromise, followed by a further compromise, to where he ends up being complicit in something that is unimaginable. And he really has to look at himself and go like, well, how far am I willing to go? Like, when is the price too high to give up my morality? Because he does manage to save his uncle's house. He does manage to move out and get his life together in some kind of semblance on a very superficial level, but he loses who he is, and he loses his love, and he loses his friends, and he doesn't like him. He doesn't like himself anymore, and he doesn't like what other people see when they look at him. And Brad and I watched this on Blu-ray, and there's a really wonderful interview or a compilation of interviews with Boots Riley speaking about this film. And when I've been watching this film, I've really gotten lost in the character of Cassius and this idea of like, you know, like each decision seems like a small decision or a worthwhile decision that takes him so far off of his course. But and Brad talked about this when he was talking about Sorry to Bother You. Sorry to Bother You is really about bringing people together and more about like even no matter how far you've compromised yourself, you can change on a moment's notice and be on the right side and make a difference. You know, it just takes the humility to look at yourself and go like, I've really fucked up, but I'll do what I can to make this a better situation. And we see Squeeze, played by Stephen Yeun. He's kind of a career community organizer, and he goes from place to place, you know, working to bring people together. And ultimately, the people becoming mobilized is what makes the difference against these seemingly insurmountable, cold corporate ideas. And I think that message is equally important. Like, you know, as you know, yeah, we can do worse and worse and worse and worse, but it's up to ourselves to decide to do better and to raise your hand and go like, I'm not for this, and look around and find the like-minded people and make the change that needs to be changed. Other than just like the message of the film, which I find just so engaging and so well constructed, just aesthetically, I think that it's beautiful. He also talks about like, you know, there's just these like little clips, like everything has a meaning, and I think about like the scene where they just look outside and somebody's in their car shirtless, like brushing their teeth. And Boots Riley talked about like how he put those little things so you can feel uncomfortable, like Cassius feels uncomfortable. And there's another little story that he told that I think sums up Lakeith Stanfield's performance in this film, because I think that it's absolutely amazing. And even the emotiveness he can achieve when he's having another voice dubbed into his voice, and how seamless that transition is. It's just really freaking brilliant. But you'll like this because you're the dork, Billy. There was one scene when he was making the movie that Boots Riley thought was very important. He really wanted to have a full frontal nudity scene for Lakeith Stanfield, but because he wanted that full vulnerability, he wanted there to be no division between your vulnerability and the character's vulnerability. And so he thought this could be achieved by seeing his dick. So
it's true that would do that.
Yeah. So, but when he started capturing his performance of Cassius Green, his vulnerability is just so on the surface. It was in his posture. It was in the way he would avoid eye contact. It would be in the way that he walked, that he gave such a vulnerable performance. And Boots Riley did not say this in so many words, but essentially the message is like, he is so vulnerable, it's like we've seen his dick. So, and I don't think that there's any higher compliment for an actor, frankly. Another character that I found myself thinking about a lot on this last watch. I'll give Billy a moment.
Sorry, that's resonating with me. I'm the target audience for that joke.
The character of Salvador, played by Jermaine Fowler. So you get the impression at the beginning of the movie that he's a childhood friend of Cassius and Detroit. Like, they seem to all have gone to high school together. But Sal is the one who got him this job at Regal View. But he was also there when Cassius got the promotion, and he pulled himself out of the protest, and then he was repeatedly creating breaking the picket line and just being pretty despicable. And Sal never, they had their like little compliment argument, but Sal never really like said a bad word to him. But it was very clear that they had a differing point of view for the time being. And I think that it was so beautiful when Cassius recognizes the errors of his ways. He has like a bajillion buckets of cold water thrown in his face in the shape of a thing I'm not going to spoil. Ugh. But he comes to Sal and to Squeeze very contrite, obviously, and he starts the conversation by just laying it out there and saying, like, I apologize. And Sal says, like, you don't have to apologize to me. All you have to do is do better. And I think that we could all give like, that's just such a tremendous act of grace. Like, going like, there was no "see, I told you so" or anything. He's just like, to me, you're the person you are in this moment. You're the person who wants to do better. You're the person who wants to fight wrong. So I don't care about the person you were 10 minutes ago. And I just think that was just a beautiful gesture. Yeah. And I just think among some of the other angry movies that we've seen this year, we put ourselves through them and they can be very hard. But I think Blind Spotting and Sorry to Bother You are two films that have a lot of rewatchability. And I think that there is a degree of uplift in these films. This like in Sorry to Bother You, there's like essentially like a curriculum vitae. Like, now I've shown you how to do it. I've shown you what happens if you don't do it. So just get your shit together and fight. So like I said in our first episode, I want to see everything that Boots Riley makes. I think that he is somebody who has a lot to say, and he has crafted his whole life as a musician and a filmmaker and just a creator of things. Like this might be his first film, but this is not the first time he has unequivocally expressed himself. So I'm in. So yeah, Sorry to Bother You is my number one film of 2018.
All right, great pick.
Nice.
All right, B.
Yes.
What you got?
My favorite film of the year is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot already. It gets to the very core of what is great about that character. Not just the character of Peter Parker, but the character of Miles Morales and the character of Gwen Stacy as seen through that dimension. And everything that Stan Lee set out to do, or he was hoping to do, him and Steve Ditko back in 1960 whatever. But like, I come away from that movie going, I feel like I just saw Pixar born again. It feels unlike any other animated movie that's come before. It's not interested in replicating American style of animation. It's not interested in mimicking anime. It's doing something totally different, and it's incorporating the comic book in a way that's never been incorporated cinematically to such a degree anyway. In what Darren was saying, with the word balloons, with sound effects, with the paneling. It's a stunning visual treat. And it's also the best version of these characters ever done outside of a comic book. And in some cases, maybe even better than the comic book. So yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is, you know, when I walked out of that theater with Darren, I was like, "Yep, that's the best film of the year."
Wow. You knew it then.
Yeah.
It's funny, like everybody's been ranking like all the Spider-Man movies, and
there's no point. It's like I might as well rank Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with the X-Men films. Like who gives a shit?
Yeah, and everybody keeps putting Spider-Man 2 up on this pedestal.
Which one?
Spider-Man 2.
Doc Ock, the Raimi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best out of the Raimi movies, but
maybe
that movie, like,
no, it does, for me, it doesn't hold up, and it's certainly not the Peter Parker that I wanted to see on the screen. No. And you know, I think to me, those are adapting those early issues of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. But Sam Raimi can't get out of himself. Like, there's such Sam Raimi movies.
Yeah.
There's Sam Raimi movies first and Spider-Man movies third.
Yeah. They just don't hold up for me. So
I like when the first Spider-Man came out, I saw that 11 times in the theater. I was
remember.
like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching a Spider-Man movie. You know, it's like what Darren was talking about with, like, you know, there's Mecha Godzilla and a Gundam. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me for seeing Spider-Man. But now, like, seeing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you know, it's really cutting into the being, like, of
I see.
Of Parker, but not so much the being of Parker, but the being of comic books, period, superheroes, period. What, you know, the idea of seeing ourselves and saying, yeah, I recognize, like, all this awkwardness that I went through, and Peter Parker and Miles and Gwen, they're all experiencing this awkwardness, but they're also able to get over all of that stuff and do things that I should probably be doing to help the world.
Okay.
And then, you know, again, like, animation wise, there's nothing like it.
Dude, that end credit sequence in 3D, fucking mind blowing. So great. And it's still like, you know, there you see the Spider-Ham thing where there's the universe where they're roasting Spider-Ham, and then it flips and then the Spider-Hams are roasting like a Spider-Man. It's so much stuff.
I keep going back to when we see, you know, when Penny Parker is operating, she's operating in an anime fashion.
Yeah.
When Spider-Ham is operating, he's operating in a Looney Tunes fashion. And when, like, Spider-Gwen, you see into her world is painted like her comic book covers are painted, not like how the world Miles is operating in. It's crazy. Yeah. It's this giant hug around all formats and characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the movie so good. All right, Billy. Your number, you already said Revenge, so I have no idea what your number one is.
I think I know Billy's.
Brian's been saying that the entire time. We haven't called him on it yet.
You want me to make a guess?
Yep.
I mean, that's up to you if you want to go out on the limb. I would die if I went out on a limb and was wrong. But...
believe me, I don't care.
Well, good. That's fine for me.
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, that's it for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yay! Yeah, that's look, guys, on the inside, I'm a secret Marxist, like, to the core. Can't fucking tell anybody about that, okay?
You're on a podcast, right?
Whoops. Not really. That's a joke. And I definitely don't support the violent overthrow of the United States government in any way, shape, or form. But let me tell you about the evils of capitalism. Okay? No, I really don't know what I was expecting when I went into the theater to watch Sorry to Bother You. And it was one of those movies where I just connected with every single turn that was going on, and it felt like it was talking to exactly my sensibilities for what I was interested in, for what engages me intellectually, for what I'm sympathetic to, for what I want to see more of on the screen. Like, at every single, there was not any point in that movie where I went in and had no expectations, that my expectations were not met. And I was not able to see that this movie should exist in my head before I saw it. But as I saw it, I was like, fucking yes! This is what you should be doing with movies. Yeah. This is what they should be every step of the way. This movie is one of the most intellectually engaging movies that I've seen all year, and it's got fucking horsecocks in it, okay? This is a movie that is made for me every step of the way. I cannot explain how much this movie is made for me. Yeah. All right? Like, the dork thing is a joke, but, like, I do notice that stuff. And then you see this movie that's talking about the horrors of capitalism, that's talking about race relations, and then they've got dick stuff in it. Like, it's great, man. It's amazing. I shouldn't be so silly while I do, because I do really think that it's a great movie. And I am joking about the horsecock stuff. I'm not. But, like... like, I think that what Boots Riley gets fundamentally as an artist, and so I'll be more serious for a second, I think what he fundamentally gets as an artist is that there is an intersection between class struggles and race relations. Yeah. And one of the shared experiences of both of those things is having your identity erased, or being put in the position where you choose to erase your own identity so that you can pursue the things that you want in the system in which you exist, or can find success in. And I think that that is something that capitalism absolutely pushes you to do, which is what he discovers through the course of the movie. Like, Keith Stanfield's character discovers through the course of the movie is that he can sell his own identity out and find tremendous financial success in the things that he pursues, so long as he's willing to let go of the things that actually stimulate him, that actually engage who he is, that actually represent him as a person in every way, shape, and form, so that he can be something else and be successful in that system. And I think that the thing that the movie gets very right in particular is that as soon as he has a taste of that success, it is impossible to just let go of it. Yeah. As soon as you find success in a system like that, even just a little bit, it immediately becomes something that I have to protect what's mine, because this is my simple stake that I now have in this world. And if I let go of this stake, I will lose everything to me. And
but isn't that so true just in our everyday lives? Like, we have like these goals and aspirations that we have, and then once we find like that 9-to-5 job that has a good salary, it's hard to let that go.
Yeah.
And so it's speaking directly to that.
Yeah. I don't talk about where I work on the podcast, but you know where I work. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are a lot of choices that I don't understand how to make, but I am confronted with them, I feel like, on a regular basis, where it's like, how do you make these things work out? How do you make your own philosophies work out? How do you be who you are in a place where, fuck, man, it's just not who you are? And what's that struggle like? And I think more than anything else I saw this year, I think Boots captured the dynamic nature of that struggle, and how you can careen wildly from one end to the other, and how hard it is to find your bearing as you go through those things. And he's phenomenal. I don't understand how this is his first movie that he directed. I think the thing that's great about Sorry to Bother You is that it's one of those movies that I think of as kind of like it's a seed movie. There's so many new ideas, I think, that you can put into this, and this is kind of along with what you talked about, Darren, whereas like you're familiar with some parts of it, and the other parts you go and you watch and you're like, I need to know more about these things, because this has caught my eye in a big way. And I think and that was like that for me as well. I'm not saying I went into the movie and was like, yes, this is all stuff that I know, or what, you know, that was my experience with it as well. But I think that will be a great many people's experience with a movie like this, where they go and they watch it and they are stimulated to go and find out more about what is being discussed in this particular movie. And I am hopeful that it'll generate conversations and interest and more art that falls along in line with what it's doing here. I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to not go on about it anymore, but Sorry to Bother You. That's easily, far and away. That's my best pick of the year.
Cool. Me and Billy are movie twins.
Yay! All right. So
Brad and Darren were almost movie twins.
We were almost. You know what?
They were fraternal twins.
You know what? Truth be told, it's Brad's own fault, because my number one was solidified until Brad sends me a text. Hey, Darren, One Cut of the Dead is on Amazon Prime. And even at that point, my number one was still solidified. I had just watched my number one film of the year. But this morning, after our little workout, I started watching One Cut of the Dead again. And I'll be goddamn if that didn't just throw a monkey wrench in every... Like I said, because of that, I struggled with its placement up until it was my turn for my number two. And I'm just going through it. I'm like, oh my God, it's as great as I remember it. And while I'm watching it, I couldn't even have like the first of all, I'm watching it on my phone because my TV's on the shits. So I'm watching it on my phone, but it's still working its magic on me. And while I'm watching, it wasn't even a pure watch, not because it was on my phone, but because I'm watching it and all the points that are hitting with me. And this go around, Billy, like you, that first 30 something minutes didn't play like the first time I watched it. It wasn't like, oh, I had to sit through it. I enjoyed everything about the film from front to back, right, this time. But the whole time I'm watching it and things are hitting, I'm going, but is this better than Spider-Man? And then I'm rewatching Spider-Man in my head, the scenes, and I'm comparing. And now I'm like, okay, now because they're both at this number one spot to me, now I have to, there can only be one, right? The Highlander, right? There can be only one. So now I have to nitpick, so to speak. And I'm like, all right. So now I'm picking at things from both movies that in any other conversation would never come up. And I'm like, fuck, I still can't find enough to justify one over the other. And then it gets to the moment, and I totally forget about this moment. It starts with when the director guy is sitting outside with the guy who drinks a lot. And the guy is talking about like, yeah, I made some shitty life choices and my daughter don't talk to me and shit, right? Yeah. And then he goes, and I've seen this in movies before, and it's not funny to me. But for some reason, I know this guy is going to end up freaking crying. And I'm talking about my first watch. But anyway, he ends up like, he's talking about it like so nonchalantly. Yeah, I fucked up and my daughter don't talk to me. And then he breaks down. And then it cuts. At first I'm laughing at that part. Then it cuts to the director in his home. And he's broken down at this point. And then it cuts to what he's looking at that makes him cry. And he's looking at pictures of him and his daughter. Yeah. And I was like, fuck it. Yeah, I think this is the number one. Because the movie spoke to me on initial watch and every watch on so many levels. Like Brian, I have a connection to this film, the celebration of the creation and creative process of making a movie. Because in the truth be told, in this film, they're actually making a TV show. Yeah. Right? But the creative process for it is one and the same. It's a team effort, right? That's the big story, right? But then each character, the wife who she wants to do acting, but she felt like she got to a point in her life where she felt like, well, maybe it's not my thing. Her arc of saying, you know what, fuck it, it's gonna be my thing. And then when she does it, she has fun doing it. It's something to the point where it almost becomes detrimental to the process, right? and the husband initially, like the husband saying, "Oh no, I don't want her to be in it. You don't understand when she acts." Initially, it's like, man, he's being a dick. Like, why are you stopping her from her drink? But he knows, like, if she gets into it, she's gonna go like ape shit, and so that's his hesitation of it. But him wanting to connect with his daughter, and not saying that as a father I look for that, but for me, I'm afraid of I don't want to ever get to that point where I have to want to reconnect with my daughter. So I live every day of my life making sure I stay connected. So but that his plight, like that's what hits me in the gut, is because I can imagine ever losing that thing that I had with my daughter to the point where I'm sobbing over pictures when things were good. And so to see that, like, it hit me. But the way that he connects with her own journey of wanting to do that and then being helpful in it, and there's so many different elements of this film. And then to talk about the technical aspect of, how to pull off this meta commentary on the creative process and the structure of the film. And the first part of the movie, you're watching the thing that they created, and then the second part, they show you how they created it. But in the way that they show it, but while they're showing you how they created it, that's not the crux of the movie. It's also all this character work that's happening, these character arcs that are happening in the film. How, initially you think the director guy is being a dick to the actors. When you see the process, he's the good guy of the film. Like and his spirit and how he just wants to do good, and how he decides, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this. And, I met Brian on a film set. We were grips. We got the coffee. We got the cables. We set shit up. We went and set everything up. I met Brian on a film set because of Hard Boiled. I wanted to get into filmmaking, and doing that, it put me on this film set with this guy. So we know what it's like to pull shit together to get a movie together. I've been with him on, more than one film set. So we've lived that life. And then because I've wanted to do it on my own, I've gone on wedding shoots with Brian. I've done, and I've worked on my own little independent things. And I joined the military because ultimately I wanted to get into filmmaking. And so this movie continually, like every time I watch it, it just inspires me. I can identify with the wife who had a career in acting, or she wanted to pursue acting, but then she fell away from it. And then because of this opportunity, she jumps in feet first. I can identify with that. Like it inspires me to say, you know what, Darren, just because life happened and you haven't done that thing you said you wanted to do 15 years ago or however many years ago, like if you have the passion still in you, if you have the ideas, if you have the support around you or whatever, even if you don't, like find it, get it, and do it. And so in a way that all the other films on my list aren't, in the way that as much as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a perfect film, and the experience I have when I watch that film is unlike any that I've had with any other on this list. The experience of watching One Cut of the Dead is unlike the one I have with any on this list, to include Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, while it does so many other things for me emotionally, One Cut of the Dead pushes me to realize my fullest creative potential, and makes me okay with don't want to beat myself up over where I am in my life not being where I thought I would be 20 years ago, because as long as I'm still breathing and I still have a creative bone in my body, I can just do it right now. And whenever I watch that movie, like the entire time, like no matter what shot it is, it always is reinforcing me. It's just showing me people doing what they love with whatever they have on hand. That the director coming up with, all right, look, shit's going sideways. Well, I got to make it work. So if I got to be off camera moving this guy even though I'm out of shot, like whatever I have to do, that whole team, whatever they have, the final shot when it culminates with them making a human pyramid so they can recreate the crane shot because the crane broke earlier in the movie. That right there is that idea encapsulated, like people coming together using their physical body, their ingenuity to make the shit work, because there's no other option. We have to get this done because we want to get this done. Not because there's a deadline with the network or whatever, because we genuinely want this completed. So we will put the blood, sweat, and tears in there and get this fucking shot. And I just find that inspiring to me. And not even in the creative aspect of my life, but in every aspect of my life. And this movie is a love letter to me. And yeah, I'm in love with it. So, yeah, One Cut of the Dead. That's my favorite movie that I saw. And you know what? Had Brad not told me that it was on Amazon, I still was going to have this on my fucking list because it is one of my favorite films of the year. I just didn't know where it was going to be 1 or 2. But now we have it. Number 1. Yeah. So we made it through the Dorkies, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry we're at 2 hours and 41 minutes.
Oh, my God.
You had nowhere to be, listener.
Shorter than the Avengers.
Wow.
Not true.
Oh, really?
Not true, yeah.
How long is the Avengers?
2:35, I think.
Yikes. All right, so we beat the Avengers.
Beat the Avengers.
And we all made it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
I'm not dust.
You can hit us up on social media, ladies and gentlemen, and let us know what your favorite films of the year are at ITMODcast. You can follow Brian at the Turtle Dork on Instagram, at the Turtle Dork 1 on... No, I'm sorry. At the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. You can follow Wife Dork at Sidewalk Siren and at Baked Dork on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Brad at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Tap. And you can follow Billy at WB Das on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. That is going to do it for us. We hope you enjoyed our recap of our favorite films of this year. Be on the lookout because our next episode coming up, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be the shit that we're looking forward to the most in 2019.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your year because it's almost over. Happy New Year from ITMOD.
10, 9. What if they started this episode like 2 hours and 43 minutes before midnight? 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Yay! Thank you all for listening. And until next year.